Call to order the regular City Council meeting for Monday, November 4th at 5:30 p.m. I'd like to welcome everybody, and at this time, I'd like to request that you silence your cell phones or put them on vibrate to limit interruptions. Moving on to the agenda, let's move on to item number 1, and that's the roll call.
Blessum.
Here.
Fuller.
Here.
Janser.
Here.
Olson. Pittner.
Here.
Ross. Samuelson.
Here.
Item number 2, Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In moving on to item number 3, in lieu of the mayor's report tonight, I would like to just take a moment of silence to honor our fallen officer, Minot Police Department officer, Matt Whitney. So please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you, and I apologize. That is Mitch Watney, by the way, Mitch Watney. I know it's been a hard week for everybody within the city of Minot, and especially our family there at the Minot Police Department. So our thoughts and prayers go out to Matt and Suzanne, his mother and father, his friends, and his extended family here at the Minot Police Department and the entire city of Minot. He will be missed. Just before we move on to the city manager's report, I do, you notice in front of me, the city of Minot has offered to become a drop-off site for Toys for Tots campaign. The program is run by the Marine Corps Reserves and serves Ward, Renville, Montreal, Williams, McKenzie, and McHenry County. The mission is simple: to collect new, unwrapped toys during October, November, and December and distribute those toys as Christmas gifts to children in need in area communities. In 2023, Toys for Tots provided 7,114 toys to more than 1,200 children in these counties. You can drop off the toys at the Minot International Airport and right here at the City Council chambers. The deadline for this will be December 21st. Moving on to reports, item number 4 on the agenda. The first one up is the city manager's report. Harold.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. I too would like to express my sincere condolences to the Watney family, to their friends and loved ones. And it'll be a difficult week for our police department and our dispatchers and all those that knew Officer Watney. With that, I would open up for any questions with regards to the city manager report that is in the packet.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4.2 on the agenda. That's the city attorney's report. Steph.
Mayor, members of the council, I submitted a written report, and I can stand for any questions at this time.
Any questions of our city manager, city attorney? Seeing none, thank you, Steph. Moving on to item 5 on the agenda, public hearing. 5.1, public hearing case number 2024-07-03, Livingston, 7th Edition conditional use permit appeal. First up, we'll have some information provided by Lance Meyer. Lance, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Here to give you some information on this appeal for the Livingston 7th edition. Afterwards, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those for you. So what's being appealed here tonight? Here's the conditions that was placed upon this item. You'll see here that the condition is no access points on 13th Street Southeast. Existing access point will be removed by the developer per the city ordinance. So all the other conditions have been agreed to by the developer. So why is this issue so concerning to city staff? Well, we're trying to protect public safety. So there's 6,500 cars a day that travel on 13th Street. It's one of the city's busiest corridors. It's one of our trunk roadways in East Minot. We're trying to protect this intersection in the corridor for future public improvements that need to be made on this roadway. And we need to design these improvements to serve all subdivision users along this roadway. So to really tie this all together, and obviously this packet's pretty large and there's a lot of traffic information in there and traffic study information, I really need to drive home a couple of concepts, and I don't want this to turn into a what is pavement that I'm so famous for, but I do have to try to educate on just a couple of points, and then we'll try to wrap that all together into what staff's thoughts are on this item and why we have some concerns. So first we had to start off with what us engineers call functional classifications. So here's a snippet of a section of Minot's. This is in the southeast section of the city. And the black lines that you see here on the road or on the screen are the local roads. That's all the roads that you and I live on. So these are low volume, high access roadways where all of our driveways are at. And those feed into the collector roads, or the purple lines that have more medium volume. So think about like maybe 31st Avenue or 3-lane roadways, less access, which then feed into our minor arterial roads, the green ones, high volume, low access. So these would be like 16th Street, 37th Avenue. And their job is to take that traffic and then funnel that to the red roadways, which is our highways. So all of these roadways function together to try to move traffic around the city. We do this to provide system planning. So when we're laying out the city and its grid, we want to be able to plan the city to efficiently move people and goods around. That's called system mobility. And then it provides the level of service that our users expect. They expect when they're driving on a highway to drive at a high level of speed with few access points. When on 37th Avenue, they want to be able to get to and from locations as fast as they can. Here's a good example on 37th Avenue. High mobility, very few access points. This corridor is planned out very well. Here's an example probably where we didn't hit the nail on the head. 16th Street, the S-curves by the water treatment plant. There's just too many access points here. Which leads to discussion on access management. So I think this section or this graphic here from the North Dakota DOT's Traffic Operations Manual does a good job at trying to explain why access management is important at this stage of the game. So small, uncoordinated land use decisions can create problems over time. And when these problems finally become apparent, the best solutions are no longer available to us. So access management is the most cost-effective way to increase traffic flow. It doesn't cost us anything, because if we can plan for improvements at this stage and really manage where those access points are located, that's the best way, that most cost-effective way that we can manage our transportation system. This leads to safer roadways. Crashes and congestion are reduced because we're reducing conflict points. So the less access points that we have, the fewer crashes that will happen. Roadway capacity is preserved by delaying the time until the roadway has to be widened. So it's a more efficient roadway with less access points. Travel time and delivery of goods and services are improved, and access management, when combined with those functional classification planning efforts, leads to safe and well-flowing corridors. So here's an example from our Broadway corridor study that we did a couple of years ago. Broadway from 11th Avenue to 20th Avenue has 560% more access points per mile than what's recommended. And this has led to 310% more or it's 310% higher in the critical crash rate for this type of facility. So obviously here, the more access points has led to a higher crash rate. Now, if you look at 20th Avenue Broadway between 20th Avenue and 40th Avenue has 8 access points per mile, which is 40% fewer than the recommended access density. This has led to a critical crash rate of 0.65, which is 30% lower than a critical crash rate for that type of facility. So what this points to is access management works. It leads to safer corridors. So let's take a look at the Circle K or the Holiday gas station site. So if you look at their access point request on 13th Street, it's roughly about 100 feet from the intersection of 21st Avenue. So just a few car lengths between the driveway and the intersection. If you look at where the site's located on our functional classification map, US 2 and 52, the principal arterial, the DOT is not going to allow access onto that facility. 13th Street, which is the minor arterial, staff does not recommend or support access onto that facility. 21st Avenue Southeast is a collector, and that's where staff does recommend access points. That facility would be able to support the needed driveways for that gas station. So how can we avoid conflicts with such a high volume of traffic on 13th Street? We need to look at, US 2 and 21st Avenue. When they designed these roadways, they had to be designed close together because of the coulee. So the intersection spacing there is not ideal. And in order to support that high amount of traffic on those two, when you put those two together, there's just not enough room there to support a high amount of turn traffic. 13th Street also has a steep grade, 5% or greater in some places. So when you're coming across the highway and you're starting to go down south down the hill, you're going to run into some sight distance issues where you may not be able to see stopped or slow traffic. The proposed driveway doesn't meet the DOT's or MnDOT's corner clearance criteria. This is the distance access needs to be spaced from intersections for sight distance and safety reasons. So if you think about what this is, it's if you're in a car and you're driving, when you're getting close to an intersection, what are you doing? You're checking your mirrors, you're looking around you, you're starting to make decisions about turning, or you're looking around for other drivers who may be coming into intersections. So you're starting to make decisions, or they're making decisions. This is where human error starts to come into play. So when you start adding access points into this functional area between these intersections, you start to increase the probability of accidents. So that's why in this corner clearance criteria, you're trying to keep this area free of additional access points, because you start to lose control of some of these issues, and we can create safety problems. So let's look at traffic accident review. When the development submitted their traffic study to the city, they did not conduct a crash data analysis, which is typical of development traffic studies. Now, we felt that was kind of odd. Typically, you'll see that in every traffic study that's submitted to us. That's kind of the second step you do when you, after you take traffic counts, is you look at what is the existing crash history in the area. We didn't see that. Of course, at this location, US 2 and 13th Street has a high amount of crashes at that intersection. It's currently ranked number 25 on the state's high crash location list. So if you're not familiar with what that is, every year the state sends us a list of the top 50 intersection crash lists in the state of North Dakota. And so if you're on that list, it means you have some work to do to try to get those intersections off that list. Minot, I think, currently has 3 for sure. So we're actually doing pretty good. Other cities like Fargo and Bismarck have quite a few on there. If you look at the study period from 29 to 21, there was 4 incapacitating injuries. Incapacitating means that you couldn't walk away from the from the crash on your own. You got to be taken off in an ambulance. From 21 to 23, there's 3 incapacitating injuries. So these aren't all the crashes that occurred at this intersection, but these were the worst ones. And I wanted to point these out because these are low frequency but high in effect because of the speed that happens at this intersection, right? Highway speeds, these are all angle or T-bone crashes, so they have the most severity. Our concern with the driveway on 13th Street is this is going to add additional friction into this area. Now you combine that with the corner clearance discussion that we're talking about before, with the grade and the sight distance issues, and with some of the turn lane things that we'll talk about in a minute. This is going to lead to an increase or a higher probability of accidents happening within this short stretch of corridor. And if that starts to back up into the highway with a high rate of speed, that's where our concern starts coming in. In addition, 21st Avenue and 13th Street also has a history of some accidents. Over the last 5 years, there are 6, but only 1 is incapacitating. 13th Street has a lower speed, so that makes sense. If we look at turn lane warrants, the traffic study that Circle K had submitted, a turn lane isn't warranted here. So when we look at any kind of improvement that we put in the city of Minot, we make sure that if it's a traffic signal or a stop sign or a 4-way stop, we want to make sure that that improvement actually meets some sort of warrant. So we don't want to put in infrastructure just because we want to. We want to make sure that it meets some sort of justification to have the expense. And in this case, there is no real point to put the turn lane in. So when we run the math, which they didn't do, they have 190 right turn lanes in their peak hour. If you run that through the DOT's right turn flow chart here, you need a minimum of 250 per hour, so they're quite a ways away from this right turn lane being warranted. So there's no capacity or crash issue here at 21st Avenue to solve. In addition, under all scenarios in their traffic study, the eastbound 21st Avenue approach at 13th Street will function at a level of service of F. And like you've probably heard Stefan or I talk about before, intersection capacities on a grade scale, A through actually it goes down to E, but E doesn't mean excellent in this case, it means really bad. So a level of service of F means that that eastbound approach, when they're at the stop sign and they want to try to take a left turn and go north on 13th, they're probably going to be waiting there on the peak hour for greater than 40 seconds per car. Now, you start looking at that in addition to some of the sight distance issues that we're going to talk about here in a second. I think that's going to be even more of a problem. In addition, in urban areas, right turn lanes are often discouraged due to safety conflicts with pedestrians and cyclists. Just so happens right next to here, we have a shared use path that's pretty heavily used. So that'll be an additional constraint that we have to work with. And like I had mentioned here before, the proposed turn lane has a sight distance issue with traffic at 21st Avenue. So if you're sitting at eastbound on 21st Avenue and you want to turn, if the turn lane's there, what ends up happening is if you're looking to your left at oncoming traffic with the turn lane there, they're blocking your view of southbound traffic in the through lane. So that's the sight distance issue that we're worried about. It's not so much the oncoming turning traffic, it's the through traffic. You can't see them anymore because those cars are now blocking your through lane turning traffic. So now you have frustrated drivers because they have to sit there for 40 seconds plus trying to make a left. We're having sight distance issues because of the grade. And now we have a sight distance issue because of the turn lane. And we have frustrated drivers now that are going to have to take a chance against that left turning traffic. And then, of course, why do we want to maintain unwarranted infrastructure? That's a question we need to ask ourselves. We have a conflict here with some future city improvements that we want to make. We've always envisioned double left turn lanes here at this intersection. Back when this intersection was built in 2011, when the signal went in, mast arms were designed to accommodate the double lefts, but we haven't met the warrants yet. In Circle K's concept here. They supplied the city with a concept of what the double lefts could look like with their turn lane. They said, well, you know what, everything fits. And yeah, it does fit. But if you look at the kind of the gymnastics you'd have to do as you drive through that heading south, you'd have to, you know, kind of turn this way and then that way, all the way back through it. It's not going to be very comfortable for the driver heading south. And then in addition, we all know that during wintertime, you know, ice and snow can cover up our street striping. It's going to be tough to see where that lane marking is in the wintertime. So we have concerns about if this is actually going to work. And then if it is implemented, someday when those double lefts are implemented, we think all this is going to have to come out and then be reconstructed. So we don't think this is a smart move for us. And then if we talk about the right turn lane at 21st Avenue, if the turn lane is granted or the driveway is granted per what Circle K is requesting, if the city was actually wanted to come through someday when the turn lane volume warrants are met and put the turn lane where it should actually be, down at the intersection at 21st Avenue, the driveway in the turn lane is a problem for us. You're not supposed to have access points inside of right turn lanes. It leads to rear end problems. So those are discouraged. So we probably have to find a way to remove then the access so that we could install the turn lane. Now, if we look at the site plan that was submitted here on May 29th of this year, we actually had a DRT meeting with Circle K. Their representatives were on the call. Mr. Coughlin was at the meeting and city staff, and we took a look at a revised site plan that they had submitted to us. And we've been working with them over the course of probably the year, us and the DOT, to come up with a site plan that would address these comments that us and DOT had. So if you look at the improvements they made, they took all their access points off of 13th Street and they moved them onto 21st Avenue, which was our request. They moved them over to the west to stay clear of the corner clearance in our site distance requests. They moved the turn lane down to 21st Avenue and attempted to put in kind of a gore area to separate that turn lane away from the through lane so we could regain that sight distance. But that's probably not going to be wide enough. We'd want that wider to open up that sight distance. So we'd have to work with them on that. And then lastly, this plan was approved by Circle K when they submitted it to us here on May 3rd. So, you know, all of this has gone through their management and then came to us, but then a new request came our way to go back to the original plan from quite a while ago. So anyway, Mr. Mayor, Council, that's all I had to present to you. I'd be open to any questions you might have.
Any questions of Lance? There may be some in the future, so Lance, we'll have you just kind of stand by. Thank you.
That's good.
Continuing on with the public hearing for Livingston 7th edition, those who wish to speak are in favor of or against, you are welcome to step forward.
My apologies, I wasn't prepared for the presentation prior to my appeal presentation. So I'd like to give you my appeal presentation. So let me begin with good evening, Mayor Ross, Council Chairman Janser, and members of the City Council. My name is John Coughlin. With my partner Jim Myers, who was unable to be here tonight, we own and operate Meadowlark Holdings, LLC. Over the past 49 years here in Minot, Jim and I have successfully developed and built multiple projects such as land development, single-family and multifamily residential, retail, commercial, mobile home park, and industrial. Our construction company has successfully completed heavy municipal, military, flood protection, ND, DOT, and even oil field projects. In over 49 years of construction and development here in Minot, we feel that we have gained the expertise to recommend to you tonight a development that is a perfect fit for our city. The development I'm referring to is Holiday Station Stores and Circle K. They propose to build a gas station, convenience store, car wash, and diesel truck island. They are strong financially, national in scope, and a well-respected company with headquarters in Minneapolis. The location of this project is the southwest quadrant of Highway 2 and 52 and 13th Street Southeast. It is properly zoned, it is an infill property, and it is the highest and best use of the site. The site currently has a 65-foot access apron on 13th Street. It was designed and built by NDDOT and City of Minot to replace a previously existing access onto 13th Street. In theory, that apron would allow 4 traffic movements: right in, right out, left in, and left out. Holiday and their nationally recognized expert traffic engineers understood the unsafe nature of that apron and designed a dedicated southbound right-in only access as the best and safest replacement of the existing apron. As per city requirements, a traffic impact study was done which substantiated the right-in only access. This right-in only on 13th Street is being disputed by Minot City Engineer with a statement on line 6 of the conditional use permit that reads, "There shall be no access points on 13th Street Southeast. Existing access point will be removed by the developer per city ordinance." This statement nullifies the entire plan. For this development opportunity to move forward, it is necessary to appeal the one condition restricting access on 13th Street. All other conditions and requirements of the city are acceptable to Holiday and Circle K. Therefore, our request this evening is that the recommendation of the Planning Commission be approved, except that line 6 of the conditional use permit be amended to allow access on 13th Street as per submitted conceptual site plan 5.2W. And maybe with all of that conversation that occurred prior to my ability to present, maybe I should then attempt to, with all due respect, refute several of the things that the city engineer said. Is that all right? This could get to be a long evening. Okay. So the very first thing that comes to mind is at the Planning Commission meeting. So the Planning Commissioners thought that they were approving this, and in their minutes, in the staff recommendation, they thought that they were approving it and that the access on 13th Street would be basically decided based on the traffic impact study. So they voted yes, weren't too worried about that because their conditional use permit that they thought they were voting on said 13th Street, yeah, we'll do that based on the traffic impact study. Little did they know that very night, April of 2023, about a year and a half ago, that the conditional use permit that was then handed to the chairman of the Planning Commission had the words changed on this line item 6. So instead of saying access on 13th will be determined based on the traffic impact study, it now said there shall be no access on 16th or on 13th Street. So somehow there was a switch there, and the chairman of the commission, seeing that all the words of the conditional use permit looked similar, signed it that very night, thinking, hey, this is great. In fact, Planning Commission members asked me afterwards, how come we're not seeing construction out there? We're really excited to see it. And I said, well, we're still having some dispute over the access. So anyway, that was kind of the beginning of the situation, I guess, if you will. The traffic impact study did come in. As I said in my presentation, it did substantiate the the dedicated write-in only access on 13th Street. So the city engineer disputed that. We had follow-up meetings, and the city engineer asked for more information. The traffic engineer that was hired by Holiday responded with a follow-up letter, and then the city staff responded to the follow-up letter. So this is going around and around. A couple of things that the city engineer, again, I was not quite prepared to respond to all of his comments tonight, but he talked about access management, okay? The Holiday Station store is going to be a really nice addition to the city of Minot, and it is going to create a little bit of additional traffic on 13th Street. So they came up with a plan that best handles that traffic, and that dedicated write-in only was their solution. They came up with it, and said, that is the best and safest plan. As we talk about, I heard the city engineer talk about the Minnesota DOT requirements and the 435-foot corner clearance on major routes. Well, the 435-foot corner clearance relates to highways, not streets. 13th Street is not a highway. So I think that is using the wrong data to produce that argument. If we look at the crash data, again, I think we have that somewhere. Here we go. Should have brought my glasses. That intersection was at one time dangerous because it had traffic signals that were swinging on cables. They had construction going on there. So there were 3 injury crashes. I'm having a hard time reading this. In 20, 21, 22, and 23. One was an angle crash, southbound to eastbound, where the eastbound driver ran a red light. One was an angle crash, northbound to westbound, where the intersection was temporarily an all-way stop. And one was a left turn crash where a westbound emergency vehicle hit an eastbound to northbound left turner. And I really, totally respect emergency vehicles, but even though they have their lights flashing and they're getting to a rescue, they still have to obey traffic signals. They can go through as long as they are safe. Okay, so I'm sure that particular person was written up for that. So much for the crash data. There was conversation about 2 things. The city engineer talked about traffic backing up all the way up into Highway 2 and 52 and now blocking high-speed traffic up there. And I think the DOT said that. Now they've kind of backed off on that, but anyway, there was concern about that. This is a gas station. There are a lot of gas stations. How many people do you see backing up? It would take 60 cars all within a minute to back up to that highway. That's just not going to happen. It's unrealistic. But it's funny because at one time they talk about traffic backing up all the way up into the highway and causing crashes, even there is a right turn lane even on 2 and 52. But in addition to that, then they turn around and say the turn lane, the right-in, dedicated right-in turn lane is not warranted. Okay? They say that the minimum warrant is 250 cars a day. And that they said they did do the math right, and there's only 190. I checked the math, and actually it's 254. However, it also requires engineering judgment. And the highest quality engineering judgment was a write-in was warranted. And so all of that conversation is, in my opinion, not pertinent. The site distance issues, I drive that every day, multiple times a day, and I think the site distance is perfectly fine. I see no problem there. So that, in my opinion, that is an opinion on behalf of the city engineer. The double left turn lane. So the city wanted to have some additional room that in the future, if they wanted a double left turn lane, there'd be right away to do it. So Holiday said that would be no problem. We have quite a bit of vacant land. We can give you an easement as much as you want for building that future right turn lane. Somewhere along the line, I think Lance asked for, well, what would that look like? And so they threw together a concept of what this could look like. Lance just said, oh, I don't think that concept looks very good. And so we don't approve of that. Well, that was and they wrote right on there, concept only, just for purposes of discussion. Now, and the real theory behind that was, if you need more right-of-way to put in a double left turn lane, we can give it to you. So that was the whole idea. The rest of it was just sketching. So that one, in my opinion, that argument doesn't count. Going on to the revised site plan that he mentioned, I think that, what was it? Lance, was that May that you said? So these conversations have been going on for a year and a half. And he said that the revised site plan 62W that he showed was approved by management of Holiday. That is not true. It was not approved by management. How that worked is that Jim Gepner is the real estate guy. He's the guy that came to Minot. He's trying to find a place to build a station store. That's his job. Well, part of his job is to find out what can be built and what does the particular metropolitan area require. And so he comes, they propose the best and safest dedicated, southbound dedicated right-in only to handle the traffic safely. And that was disputed by the city engineer. So after meeting, many concept plans were drawn. And they kept changing the plan, and finally when they got to 6.2, the city said, hey, we can approve that one. And what 6.2 was, no access on 13th, all traffic goes to 21st Avenue for its right turns rather than the dedicated turn lane. So that plan was never approved by management. That was Jim Gepner finding out what it would take to acquire this property and build a convenience store. That was where he found out that's where this was at. Okay, so now the city said that was what we could do. So then Jim said, well, let's go to a DRT meeting. and find out what else we have to do. Went to the DRT. And in the DRT, the city said, you know, there are various things, you've got to do this, got to do that. And there's a sewer hookup fee. Okay, Jim's taking note of all of that. And in the end, he said, gentlemen, ladies, thank you so much for all your hard work. We'll see where we can go with this. We hope we can have a great project. Okay, that was the end of the meeting. Everybody was pleasant. So that was not the approved plan. In fact, I think what I handed you tonight, Councilman, is a site plan. It's called 52W. And 52W is the only plan that has the approval stamp of Holiday Station Store. All the other concept plans were concept only. They were not approved by management. So that's where we're at. Holiday was being true. They just hadn't, you know, what do we need to do so that we can come to Minot? Now let's go back to our management and see what the outcome is. And the management said, that doesn't make any sense. And so that was kind of sad news to hear that they probably would not be coming because they couldn't do the safest and the best plan. And frankly, I agree with them. I've looked at this and I just don't see the logic. So I'm going to get into something else. Level of service at 21st Avenue. So Lance mentioned that the level of service for eastbound on 21st Avenue is currently at F. The city traffic engineer did state, and I can find his quote here, probably should. There we go. Sorry that this is taking so long. Oh, wait, wrong one. I guess I'm really sorry I wasn't prepared to do this. Let's see. Okay. City traffic engineer. We're talking about level of service eastbound on 21st. He says, the addition of southbound right turn traffic with or without a dedicated southbound right turn lane has extremely minimal impact to 13th Street Southeast operations. Per Synchro, which is a computer program for traffic, the addition of a driveway does reduce the 21st Avenue Southeast delay at 13th Street Southeast, but under all build conditions, driveway, no driveway, whatever, the eastbound approach has a level of service of F. So think about it. It does improve it. So if you don't put this, if this gas station, convenience store, car wash is going to create traffic, you want to do access management, you want to do traffic management, and I think they've done a wonderful job of it. So if you don't put it in, the level of service is going to be worse than F minus. And so my personal opinion, that I guess I would say doesn't hold water, I guess, that argument. As a matter of fact, if you think about it, maybe we can cut to the chase by thinking of this. The Holiday engineers proposed a right-in only, dedicated southbound, to handle 254 entrances per day. It was, theoretically, it was warranted, even though you get this contradiction between stacking all the way up into the highway or not enough cars to warrant the deal. Either way, it's warranted and it will handle the additional traffic nicely. So think about if you're the driver, you have that 52W in front of you. If you are, like Lance was saying, if you're eastbound and you want to do anything, you could take a right, go south, you could go across eastbound, continue eastbound on 21st, or a lot of people would want to turn left and go northbound. If you do what the city wants, all that traffic, that additional 254 cars, has to come down to 21st Avenue and then turn the corner. If you're sitting there you don't dare drive out because he could be going straight. Did he put his blinker on? Are his wheels turning? Is he actually? So you're gonna stay put until you see this guy actually start to make the turn. Then you feel safe. Okay, now I can go out and do my whatever turn I want to make. So that's one of my points there, is that the level of service is improved if I can see that this person in a dedicated right-in only going into Holiday, if they're in that lane, they're not going to come back out of that lane, and besides which they're slowing down. The speed limit is 30 miles an hour right there. So now if they're dedicated and they're starting to arc into Holiday Station Store, I now know that that car is not a threat to me. So that improves my ability to move any direction I want to move. That's also true, so that's eastbound. That's also true for northbound. You're coming up from the south, you see traffic coming down. If they're coming down to the 21st Avenue and turning right, as the city wants to do, you have to stop and wait until they get all the way down, slow down, and once they start turning, you dare do what you want to do. Let's say, make a left turn. So, once again, that actually lowers the level of service for that intersection. Lowers it for eastbound, lowers it for northbound, and we can say the same thing for westbound. Again, you have to wait till that traffic gets to 21st Avenue to see what that traffic's actually going to do, versus the traffic is already in its dedicated right turn lane. You don't have to worry about that. So in every direction, the level of service is improved at 21st and 13th. And using the city's format, I think the level of service is actually lowered. So again, wasn't prepared to make all these arguments, and I'm sure Lance will have things, and then I'll be back up. And I guess my main point is that it's a great product. I think they're probably going to invest $15, $20 million in that site in Minot. We need the growth. I think that they're going to generate $400,000 a year in tax revenue for local coffers. We can use the revenue. It's an infill property. You know, in all the 49 years I've been a developer, I've never taken a penny of TIF money or government handouts, and neither has Holiday. We're not asking for that tonight. We're just asking for the ability to help grow this town through development. So I'll let Lance come up and refute me for a while, and I'll come back later. Any questions, though? I should stop.
Are there any questions, Mr. Coughlin? Lisa?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Coughlin, this has been in the news a little bit, so we've had some phone calls on things related to it. One concern is the potential of semi-trucks backing up. Now, that right turn lane is for car traffic only, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct.
So if there are some semi-trucks, they're gonna come in 21st and make the turn. In the whole business concept of this, do you anticipate a lot of semi-traffic, or do you see it more as dually pickups that are getting diesel, or you know, what do you see as the customers that are servicing the diesel pumps there?
Great question. So there are semi-trucks that are turning there now. They're doing multiple deliveries to Tractor Supply. That seems to be working. I don't think you're going to see full-size semi-truck and trailer. I think they would be going to the truck stop nearby. This is the diesel truck island is 3 diesel pumps serving 4 lanes. So it's just not a major attraction. I view it as a farmer, a rancher, oil service company with their 1-ton pickup, bringing in a trailer, going to Tractor Supply is a big attraction for that particular crowd. Going there, swinging back into Holiday, good access for that type of truck, and fueling up and parking and going in and grabbing a soda and a sandwich and going on with their jobs. So I just don't, why would a semi want to do that? But if they did want to, it is built accordingly, and it can handle full-size semi-traffic. But it's not a truck stop.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Continuing on with the public hearing, now is the opportunity for those who wish to speak in favor of or against.
Just a couple of corrections, Mr. Mayor. So the switch at Planning Commission was just a honest clerical mistake by some of our Planning Commission or planning staff, and that obviously was corrected. It's not it's whatever the Planning Commission decides. It's not what paperwork goes in front of the chairman. So that was long issued or corrected, and that got brought up at the Planning Commission meeting and got explained away. So that's not an issue there. Regarding the access, the right turn lane is the safest and best. Well, the safest and best is no access at all, because there's no conflict points with any oncoming traffic. And that's why staff has been advocating for the access points to be on 21st Avenue away from the arterial, because that's the safest and best place for those access points. The accident data that Mr. Coughlin was referencing, that's why we went back to reporting periods, because there was those emergency vehicle accidents when that traffic light was out. So we wanted to make sure that we're reporting not just on one, but a couple different accident reporting periods, so it's not skewed by the numbers. And again, we're not just reporting, or the accidents that we showed you are not all of the accidents, just the incapacitating ones. So, there's quite a few more accidents at that intersection. The traffic backup that we're concerned about is not the folks exclusively trying to get into the gas station. It's what happens if there's some sort of issue on that roadway. Frequently when I drive it, there's someone that's trying to take a left-hand turn to go into the tire store that's on the left-hand side, and they stop in the driving lane in 13th Street. So then everyone's barreling across the highway trying to make the light, and then they have to come to a screeching halt so they don't rear end that driver. Those are the sort of things that we get concerned with. It's those sort of human error type of accidents that can have then a catastrophic event that then backs up into the highway. So if you add this additional access point in the location on 13th Street, now with the gas station, again, it adds additional points for human error that could happen. Regarding the double left turn lane concept, yes, it is just a concept, but again, that option's off the table now. We're not talking about that anymore. We're talking about the original option that was presented to staff. So, the negotiation, if you will, is somewhat moot. We've only seen 2 plans. I think Mr. Coughlin referenced that we're on iteration 6 or something. That might be, maybe they have more internal drawings or something that they've come up with, but we've only seen the original plan that's in front of you tonight, and then the revised option that came in front of us at the DRT meeting in May. So it's not like, they presented something, we shot it down, and something else. We've been pretty adamant that we want access a certain way because we felt strongly about where those access points should be, but it's not like they revised something and brought it back. Actually, on the contrary, we were trying to have scoping meetings with their traffic engineering staff so that us and the DOT could sit down and tell them, hey, this is exactly what we want to see, so that you can do this traffic engineering study once and submit it to us so we can evaluate it. But they never really wanted to do that. And then finally, regarding the modeling and synchro, one thing you have to understand about what synchro is it is a computer modeling program. So you put the data in, it's going to give you the data out, but it can't analyze things like sight distance in real world situations and topography. So that's up to professional engineers like myself and Stefan to analyze. It's not going to pick up the sight distance issues that come into play when you have those right turn lanes. So that's why if you look around town, any of the new right turn lanes now that are being designed by the DOT, like if you look over by Homesteaders, those all have those gored offsets in those turn lanes. They're moving them away from the drive lanes because right turn lanes that are right next to the drive lanes have a sight distance issue. So the new way that we design these turn lanes now is to try to move them away to prevent that sight distance issue. You're not going to pick that up in a computer modeling program. So while the computer is saying that, yeah, it's going to have a slightly better effect, it's still level of service of F. So say maybe you shave 5 seconds off of that level of service F. I guess that's a win. But the trade-off is still the sight distance issue that we're concerned with. So I don't really think we gain anything. In fact, we think we lost something there because of the safety issue. So that's, again, why we have concerns about this. Other than that, like I've said from the beginning, staff is in support of this project. We think it's a good place for a gas station, has high visibility. We just want everyone to be safe. As professional engineers, job number 1 is to make sure that infrastructure is being designed to keep our citizens in this community safe. And so that's what we're trying to recommend to you. You all do with that what you will, but that's our professional recommendation to you.
Mike?
Lance, so if I can, let's walk through a couple things. So first, in condition 6, where it says there should be no access points on 13th Street Southeast, existing access points shall be removed by the developer per city ordinance. I just want to be clear about what city ordinance is referring to there. There's nothing written in the city ordinance about where entrances go or anything of the sort. What I believe that's referring to is your professional judgment. Is that correct? Is that the right way to think of when it says per city ordinance? That's what we're referring to here.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessum, we have provisions in Chapter 28 of our Code of Ordinances that refers to our access management policies as our guidance for things like where access points should be. We also have provisions for removal of driveways that are no longer in use. So if this driveway is abandoned within the right-of-way and the driveway is relocated somewhere else, then the developer would be responsible for removal and restoring it to a typical boulevard. That's what we mean by per ordinance.
Okay, so once again, though, to be clear, there isn't something in the ordinance that governs where this goes. I mean, It's not written that way. So again, back to what you were saying, between you and Stefan, our professional engineers who we employ at the city, we expect your judgment in these cases, and that's what you're giving.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, so then next, and I'm gonna go back to the same thing that Mr. Coughlin referenced, and you actually just referenced it as well. So what we're all talking about here is a Collier's traffic letter that I believe was drafted and sent to the city. And then what we have in front of us is information that you and your team have interspersed within that letter, correct?
That's correct.
Is that the way to think of that letter? Okay.
Yes, it's towards the end of the exhibit that's attached to your packet.
Yep, exactly. So on page 4 of that letter, it's what, and Mr. Coughlin read through it all, so I'm not gonna do that. But this is the part that I can't rectify in all this. And actually, you just said it again, Lance. City staff seems to be in favor of this development. We've heard that everywhere, both in discussions, in private discussions as we were headed into, even before the election, this came up, and there were some discussions that I was in where this project came up. We've heard all along that city staff is in favor of it. It's a great, as you just said, it's a good place for a gas station. Makes sense. It's high visibility that you can see why Holiday wants to put it in that spot. What I can't understand is, why are we doing that when we've already got traffic issues? We're already at a service level of F, and we've got one of the most dangerous intersections in the state right up the road. I don't understand why we're saying we're in favor of this if those are the conditions. And that's not just you, Lance. That's been through the planning process. That's been in these other discussions. So am I missing something there? Because those statements don't seem to jive.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessum, the way to look at this is there's a zone that permits something like this to happen there. There's a conditional use that is now, I guess, in front of you to make a decision on, at least this section, whether you want that to move forward or not. Yes, there are traffic issues at this intersection. What our job then as a staff is to try to find the safest and best way to move this development forward. So if the planning commission and the council decide that, okay, a gas station is gonna go here, right? They met the entitlements, this should happen, then it's up to the engineering staff to try to find a way to mitigate any potential traffic issues that come up. So while they submitted a traffic study, just submitting something doesn't mean it's correct, right? That's our job, is to go through it and find areas of disagreement and then try to work through that. And that's what we've done, is to make sure that we have the best interests of the city in regards to safety at the forefront. I think we've done that.
So if I can continue, Mr. Mayor. So in that block that I'm referring to, this is actually the city's response back. And this is what both you and Mr. Coughlin are referring to, where it does say, again, per synchro, we realize that that's a computer program. The addition of a driveway does reduce 21st Avenue delay. And so, again, if we take the whole thing, we know we've got issues, we know that this is all that, we're trying to minimize it. In your own words, or in the words of the city side, doesn't that say the entrance is better? I mean, I think I see what you're saying, that you've got to bring the human element, you've got to bring the mind into it, correct? You got to look at it and say, well, wait a second, the data's saying that, but we've got to add something to that, right? I think that's kind of what you're getting at.
That's exactly what I'm saying, Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessum. It's not just the data. You got to look at what's the data telling you. Okay, so the computer model says that this is going to take some of the load off the intersection itself, but then at the end, all those trips have to go somewhere, right? They filled with gas, they've got their diesel, they got their ice and whatever. Where are they going to go? They're coming, most of those trips are going to come back to the intersection at 13th Street and 13th Street and 21st Avenue. Well, they're either taking a left or right. Not very many are going to go eastbound, right? And so because of that, now you got to look at where are the sight distance issues going to be. If that turn lane is there, and the way that they have it drawn without that gore where you're separating off that turn lane so that you can have that space where you can basically see through that gap between the drive lane and the through lane, without that being there, that's where we have the concern. That's where the sight distance issue is, and that's where our concern is with the safety. And so what we're advocating for in reality is no turn lane, because then, one lane that you're looking at if you're a stopped vehicle. That car is either coming at you, whether it's turning or it's going straight. Okay, so hopefully they're using their turn signal, but even if they're not, you're probably going to be more cautious and you're going to avoid your left turn until that car is cleared. If there is a turn lane there and they design it right with a gore and they moved them over, at least that car then is out of your turn view, and now you're just looking to see if there's a southbound car coming at you.
If I can continue, and I realize now we're discounting the drawing that has the dual left turns. I get that, but doesn't that one have the gore design? I think that one actually does.
That one has a gore, but the one that is submitted to you does not.
Okay, so I guess maybe, are we at the point, is the gore the issue? Like with the gores there, does everybody get what they want? Is it a matter of moving that over 10 feet and blocking that part off? Sort of like what, I think of the one out by Walmart now that's got the things in it. I mean, it's kind of that idea. It's not the same thing, I guess, but if that's the hang up, I think that dual lane one already shows that. And I realize we have to approve what we have in front of us. I understand that part, but is that the compromise position, to give both what they want?
It could be, but then I think, Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessum, you have to look back at some of the other things I mentioned, that we're taking some of those potential future options off the table. But that's a decision you'd all have to weigh to see if those rise to the top or not. I think that, in my professional opinion, I think that makes the dual left hard to do someday. It definitely takes the right turn at 21st someday off the table.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Rob?
Thank you. Thanks, Lance. So just real quick before I get into the questions, I guess my concerns here stem from our commitment to economic development in this city. We've engaged in extensive discussions about property taxes and other revenue sources over the last few months.
Excuse me, Rob, just, I think though, for this, if we have questions of Rob,
That's
if
fine.
we have questions of Lance, once we get into the motion in a second, the direction, then I think that would be a good time for that discussion.
Okay,
Not,
perfect.
just to keep it,
Okay, so Lance, then I'll get on to the questions with you. Colliers, are they a reputable company? Do we know anything about them?
I never work with them personally, but they have a professional engineer just like Stefan and I, yes.
Okay, so,
go ahead.
If I may answer that question. So Colliers is a very prominent company within economic development throughout the country. They're probably one of the biggest ones in the country. When I go to the International Shopping Center conference in Las Vegas every year, they have probably one of the biggest booths out there. But they represent clients. So their job is to get the best deal for their client that they possibly can. And in this situation, their client is Mr. Coughlin, not the city of Minot. So it's like having a difference of opinion between attorneys or doctors or whatever else. If you want a certain opinion, you can probably go pay somebody to get that opinion. And I'm not saying that Colliers is an opinion for hire, but their job is to represent the client. Their job is to present data and opinions that can make solutions work on behalf of their clients, not based off of what's the safest option or the best option for the local community. I'll leave my statement to that. But they are a very large, well-paid, well-compensated, well-represented corporation within the United States.
okay, well, while I agree with that, they've been around for almost 40 years and they do a few hundred to a few thousand traffic studies every year. I went out and I actually called them and I talked to them because I wanted to know, if they were reputable or not. So, having said that and having heard what Harold said, are you stating then, or do you feel that their engineers were bought and gave just what Mr. Coughlin was looking for rather than what was actually the best site plan for that area?
Well, I wouldn't say they're bought. I'm never going to say that against another professional engineer, but I think their traffic study was a bit lacking, and I think that Stefan did a good job at walking through it and asking some tough questions of them.
Okay, so with regard to the accidents and everything out there that we've kind of referenced, and I looked at the crash, like you guys said, that it's the 25th worst intersection in the state, correct?
Correct.
I think over the last 3 years, what has there been, 20 total crashes? Last year, there was 4, but none of them had to do with turning off a 13th, right? As we've all kind of mentioned, it was all traffic crossing on the highway. It had nothing to do with the actual 13th Street at all, correct? With those four accidents that were injuries?
Well, it's all about the intersection,
Well,
Fuller
but
and Fuller.
it's not, because the accidents were traffic going east and west on the highway. None of the accidents were traffic turning onto 13th. Is that not correct?
I'd have to look at the crash report again, but they're reported in the intersection.
Correct, but the 13th Street is not the intersection. 13th Street is south of the intersection, correct?
Yes.
Like where we're talking about going into the gas station and that right there? Okay. So I guess what I'm having trouble with here, kind of like Mike, if you guys are approving of this, and we've already looked at some data from the traffic study and the city's rebuttal letter and everything, you're in agreement, I think from what you just answered, Alderman Blesson, that the right-in turn lane does increase traffic, the flow of traffic on 13th. Now, you keep mentioning that when they go take that right-in turn lane, that they're unable to see the other traffic. On the site plan that I've been given or that I've seen, or the one you put up there, it looks like the traffic moves to the right. The right-in turn traffic moves to the right, and you can still see the oncoming traffic in the lane that's headed south down 13th. Is that not accurate?
No, because when you're at the stop bar on 21st Avenue, you're gonna have to look through that car to see the southbound traffic on 13th Street.
So you're saying when they're coming in that turn lane, even though they're over to the west a little bit further than the straight on lane, you're not gonna be able to see the straight on lane?
Right? They're only 100 feet from the intersection.
Well, I use that intersection just about daily, like you said you did. And I mean, I've never noticed, I guess, when I've pulled up to 13th, I mean, up on that 21st section, the main issue that I always see is the driveway on the west side, on the east side, like you had mentioned a minute ago, coming out of the Tires Plus. I mean, there's always people trying to turn in there. So if we're not gonna allow a turn in here, why have we allowed that one over there?
Well, that one, unfortunately, they had an existing building there, so sometimes you do the best you can with what you got, and it is what it is. But I think in this situation, we're trying to prevent a situation where we're making something worse. That's how I look at it.
Well, and I understand that, but nowhere do we see anywhere that the data shows that it would be worse. It shows that it improves traffic flow, that right-in turn lane headed south, and while people turning off of 21st onto 13th, mainly north to go back to the major intersection, may see some delays, it sounds like that's an F intersection anyway. No matter whether that right-in turn lane there is there or not, that's an F intersection no matter what, correct?
That's correct. But remember, the point we're trying to make is because of the sight distance issue, we're trying to make it so that the frustrated drivers don't take any more chances than what they have with the sight distance. So, that's been our concern here is if you're already sitting at the intersection, it's a level of service F, but now we're compounding that with the right turn lane and the sight distance issue, we feel that that intersection now is less safe.
So I guess my question, Lance, nowhere in the traffic study, nowhere in the Department of Transportation stuff, not even in the city's rebuttal, do I see anything about the site issue. Why is that all of a sudden coming up tonight? That is not written in any report, rebuttal letter, or anything else. Why is that the point tonight? The only reference to it was corner clearance. And you guys are talking about the 435 feet in the city's rebuttal letter on page 8 of that in the blue box. You guys say, however, Colliers does not analyze the corner clearance for a relationship of the 13th and 21st Avenue Southeast intersection. The upstream corner clearance is 435 feet. It is recommended that no access is given within the corner clearance. But we don't talk anywhere in there about the site issue. So why all of a sudden, after 2 years of going back and forth over this, is the site issue now the thing? And it's never been mentioned before.
Well, I think that's, part of this issue taking as long as it has. A person can sit and look at this and noodle on it forever, just like everyone has had an opportunity to. And I think the longer that you look at this, you find more and more issues with it. And I think this site distance thing is, to us, it's a pretty significant issue. And the more that we looked at this and we found the concept that's been resubmitted to us now, that became a pretty pressing concern.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions, Lance? Lisa?
Yeah, thank you. So we've talked about 21st Avenue a lot now, that intersection being a bad intersection. Where is it in our CIP? Is it anywhere where we're going to address the seriousness of that intersection with or without a gas station here?
Mr. Mayor and Alderwoman Olson, nothing at this time for 21st Avenue. There isn't a whole lot for countermeasures that we can do, just because of how tight we are to the edge of that coulee. A mini roundabout would be nice, but we're just a little bit out of room potentially for that. We could look at an option like that. A full roundabout obviously is out of the cards, just because, we're going to drop off into the coulee so quick. It would take quite a bit of grading to make something like that work. With all the truck traffic that we have there with trucking industries and the truck stop, we just don't have the room we need to make something like that work. With just a typical four-way intersection like that, we don't have a lot of great options in front of us.
And then just another question. So some of the concerns at that intersection are, and I drive it every day too, so I'm very familiar with this area, would be the traffic coming on 21st, wanting to turn left to go north. Are you concerned about the amount of traffic at that intersection increasing because of the vehicles leaving the gas station? And if so, is there a way to encourage them to take a right out and go down 21st and enter the bypass by the highway department and such? Is that an option to consider?
Potentially, but it really depends on, where those trips are coming to and from. And it's really hard to know. You're gonna have some highway trips that come off the highway, they're gonna see the sign and say, hey, I need gas. And I mean, that's really the draw for that location, right? That's why they picked it. You're gonna have some neighborhood trips that come to the south. They're coming home from work or they're going to work and they're gonna stop there to grab something or gas. So the trips are going to be probably well distributed from either highway trips or neighborhood trips. So it's a little bit tough at this point to know exactly where they're all going to come from. As far as, trying to split those out, it's hard to do that without, putting some sort of restriction in the roadway.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome.
Continuing on with the public hearing, for those who wish to speak in favor of or against, now is your opportunity to step forward.
Once again, we had a 65-foot wide apron, and even anyone could tell you that 4 movements out of that apron, right in, right out, left in, left out, was not a safe way to go. So everyone is in agreement that a right-in turn lane is the safest and the best, except for maybe our city engineer. So I had conversations. I had a conversation with the president of Colliers, and it was amongst other things we were talking about. One of the questions that I asked was, so do you guys just do things to benefit your customers? And he kind of laughed sternly about that, and the fact that he said, John, we do the best engineering possible our business is, we stake our business on our reputation, and we only do the best engineering. We do not do things for our clients in that regard. So just to clarify that. Talking about anecdotal conversations, had visits with just passing this or that, and people would say things, and had some expertise weigh in on this, and they just went, John, why in the world would this not, this is obviously, it doesn't even take a traffic engineer to realize that this is the best and the safest. Why would this be such a problem? And I tell them, I scratching my head, and I say, I don't know either. But after those anecdotal conversations, I thought, you know what? I'm going to hire another professional North Dakota traffic engineering firm, and I'm going to have them vet this traffic impact study and ideas that the city had talked about. And so gave them all the information, and probably I'd say about 10 days of study. And we finally had a telephone conference, Jim Myers, myself, and two people on that, and very respectable traffic engineer. And he was going, you know, that traffic impact study, the information is correct. The right-hand turn makes some sense. So we challenged him with all kinds of ideas the city had, bringing it down to 21st. Frankly, I can't remember, but I would say this conversation was a 15-minute conversation, and we're just challenging this guy to prove that the traffic impact study was, there was a mistake or something. A lot of conversation back and forth for about 15 minutes, and finally this gentleman, the traffic engineer, made the statement, guys, really, this dedicated southbound right-in turn lane is actually your best plan. And it was like, what do you say after that? I mean, so we just, pretty much that was the end of the conversation. So I don't know, we vetted it, and I just look at other traffic situations. I look at South Broadway, it functions, it's got a lot of traffic and a lot of at-grade aprons, and yet it functions. And this, in my opinion, is Holidays and Collier's solution for the traffic that they are creating, and it's the safest and the best. And I think it actually improves the level of service at 13th and 21st. With that, I would ask for your guys' opinion. Thank you. Oh,
Mike.
questions?
Mike.
Yeah. John, so I referred just a minute ago to a gored right turn lane. We saw a drawing, I think it was maybe in Lance's presentation, that had the dual left turns, and I'm not all that worried about that for this second. Looks like there's plenty of land there. Is there a gored option that would be acceptable to Circle K? That would just move it over another 10 feet to the west?
I don't know that it needs to be moved over, but I think there is a gored option. In fact, Lance, didn't we talk about that in one of the conference table conversations that we had with them? And that was talked about, putting a gourd in there. And there were some sketches, I think we had a whiteboard, or maybe not, I can't remember. But so I don't think that's really an issue. I think that one would be fine. I think the fact that, big deal, a gourd will maybe be helpful, but it still allows access the way I think access should be allowed. So, and that's something that we can work with the city on, is how that gourd would be designed and approved by the city.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I can continue, and actually, I don't know if it would need to be planning, Lance, the city attorney. With the way that this is before us, we've got an appeal on a specific condition, correct? And that condition doesn't talk about what the design is, although it may be referring to a drawing. So that's where I get a little bit nervous, and I want clarification. If we accept the appeal we're saying condition 6 does not apply. That opens it up. Does that still leave room for this kind of discussion, or is it specific to the drawing that we've got?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessam, if I can, while the attorney and the engineer are thinking, I think what you have in effect is the city attorney has used his authority underneath ordinance to say that in his professional opinion, allowing a right access only in, as Circle K has requested, is not recommended, and he has denied that. Mr. Coughlin is now appealing that decision, so you're deciding tonight whether or not you're going to accept his appeal and allow a right turn lane only in or not. That's the decision you have in front of you tonight.
So if I can continue, so my question still stands, is it as drawn, or is it a discussion on what that right turn in looks like? Because I guess as I'm hearing the discussion here, to me, it feels like a gored entrance gives both parties most of what they want. Maybe not all in either case, but most.
If I could interject, there is a deceleration lane, and so the traffic will be in that lane, and they will be slowing down to make the right-in only turn. So I think the gore would be to try to stop them from then jumping back out of that deceleration lane, jumping back into the southbound lane of traffic that's going 30 miles an hour and they're only going 10. I don't know, that,
I think it might also move it over, say, 10 feet west. And I think because that's what the city engineer was getting at, was those sight lines. Again, I understand what we're saying, that discussion is kind of tonight. That's where that's come from. But that sight line, I'm sensitive to that. As I drove the site and tried to look at it and tried to understand it, to me, and Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, I don't want to get into the discussion. We'll get there. I guess if I can get this question answered, I can come back to this when we get there.
Steph?
Mayor, Councilmember Blessam, the appeal before the council is as it's submitted by the applicant that's making the appeal. So if there's re-engineering or something that's being considered, that would have to be submitted to the engineering department for comment, and then back to the planning commission.
Okay, so it is as
It's
drawn?
It's as drawn, yes. So if the questions, can the council re-engineer at this phase? The answer is no. It would be just on the documents as it's presented to the council.
Okay, so to be clear, our document contains the drawing that has the entrance without the spacing or the gore to it. So that's what, we're deciding the appeal based on that.
Yes, that's the appeal, that's the request that's being made by the applicant on the appeal, and that's the document that he's asking you to approve. Is that correct, Mr. Coughlin?
yep, that
Right?
is correct.
Okay.
Mark?
I guess so, following the conversation, and maybe this is a question for the city attorney. So what are our options here, actually? Either approve or disapprove what's in front of us, send it back to the planning commission with the suggestion that a revised drawing with a gore be utilized and worked out, or what are the options in that regard?
Well, I think if we deny the appeal, it would go back to, the project would be approved, and then it would go back to potentially the developer, Holiday Station, and engineering coming up with another plan if they could. But we would, I think, and I could stand corrected, we would have to deny the appeal first to send it. I mean, if we do anything other than that, it's basically approved.
Understood. Okay, thanks.
Is that, okay. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, then I'd look to city staff. Is a gore, where do you guys stand on your professional opinions on that as an option if it were to be denied and go back to planning?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Pittner, in our professional opinion, if we're going to add a turn lane and we're gonna add it with a gore, we'd like to see it down at 21st Avenue at the intersection where it should belong.
Maybe if I may continue.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor. Then I'll go to the applicant, to John. Has that rendition come across in conversations with the developer on having a gored right turn lane on 21st?
There were conversations in a conference room, in the city manager's conference room, about a gore. I think the city engineer was asking about it. And Mr. Gepner was in the room, but he was letting his traffic engineer have the conversation back and forth. So there was some conversation between the traffic engineer and the city engineer about a gore. I don't think it ever evolved into any kind of definitive decision. And that's probably about as far as it went, really. I will say that I think it's been 2.5 years now that I've been working with Holiday on this particular project, and 1.5 years since this problem arose. And they have actually notified me that this is not going to be acceptable to them unless they get what they approved. And frankly, I don't blame them, because I think that what they have recommended in 52W is the absolute safest and best. They did notify me that wasn't, I could probably read their letter or parts of it. I don't know if that they were intending it to be public, but I'll just read a little bit here if I can find it. Here we go. The committee has decided that access only from 21st Avenue, in comparison to our plan providing access from both 13th and 21st Avenue, will provide less consumer-friendly access and safety. Safety equipment, convenient access, being fire trucks, ambulances, things, and on-site traffic flow per our current design criteria and confirmed by the independent traffic engineer. Thus, we will not be able to move forward under the above reference Minot DOT site plan proposal at this time. We greatly appreciate the time and effort you and the City of Minot and North Dakota Department have allowed us during the consideration of our site plan proposal. We and our many fans and loyal customers of our products and services, including grocery and convenience items, hope further consideration and support for our plan from the City of Minot, North Dakota is still an option. The fastest way for us to develop a convenience center at this location is to agree to the city's and DOT site plan proposal. However, at Circle K Holiday, we will always choose consumer-friendly access and safety first and foremost. Thank you, Jim Gepner. So if you choose to deny, I think that will be the end of it. I wouldn't blame them. They've been very patient and I've asked them to stay patient with me, and we've struggled through this. So we're kind of at a crossroads right now, and if we are pro-growth, we should be thinking that this is perfectly acceptable, perfectly safe. In my opinion, it's the perfect answer to the increased traffic that site will create. So with that, I think we've beat that one enough, but I'll stay for questions.
Go ahead, Harold.
Mr. Coughlin, so assuming that Colliers has done all their work and you believe this is the safest, are you or Circle K willing to put up a bond for a certain period of time that if you're wrong, that the taxpayers don't end up paying for the fix?
I think that was discussed by Colliers, and I think that maybe they would be. Again, when did that discussion happen? Was that in your conference room?
I don't recall that conversation in my conference room. My main concern here, I mean, ultimately it's, city staff is between a rock and a hard spot, right? We can approve this and we agree that we want this development to happen. It's good for Minot, and we can prove that. But if accidents increase there, the public is going to think less of the city because we were more interested in revenue and growth than we were on the safety of the public. Or the city can take the position that our engineer has taken tonight and advocate for safety, and then we get accused of being unfriendly to development. Ultimately, staff is looking for a balance in the middle of both of these. So I guess my question is if we're wrong and we allow the access and we're all wrong here and accidents increase and both in number and in severity, at the end of the day, it's the public that gets to pay to fix those intersections. And so I would recommend that if the council wants to move forward with this and if Circle K is willing, and I don't know the proper amount, but I think that there should be some sort of bond that the city can call on if we do in fact have to come back and spend money to fix this problem to make it more safe in the future.
So that sounds good. I think that's a sticky wicket. Man, how's the wording of that bond going to be drafted? That, I don't know. I can't speak for Holiday and I can't speak for Colliers. I don't think that's really necessary. I'm going to come back to the same thing that I've been saying, is that this is a great plan. This is a wonderful business to bring into town. There's nothing wrong with the access. It is the right decision. And I think we are at this point right now that I'm not necessarily sure that they're going to want to go for a bond. They might be a little bit frustrated at this point. Actually, they, as you see, they did say they weren't going to come. And at that point, I said, well, hey, listen, let me try one more time. Would you be patient? And they said, we'd love to see you try. But so I think if I go back with anything other than a great plan, I think they're probably going to say, we don't need that. And we've got lots of other cities around North Dakota that are welcoming us. So I think they'll probably not go for that. That'd be my guess.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Rob?
and this question is actually for the city manager. Have we required other companies coming into Minot to put up a bond to correct something if we made a mistake?
We have lots of contracts that do that. In fact, you have an extension of one on Popeyes on the agenda tonight.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thanks, John. Continuing on with the public hearing, are there any further comments either for or against? Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council? Mike?
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we approve the appeal
We have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
and close the public hearing.
Who second? Scott second. Motion by Mike, second by Scott. Discussion. Mike?
Mr. Mayor, so I guess through the discussion tonight, I think we've seen the sort of rock and a hard place that the council's in tonight. We are asked to accept a drawing as is with a condition either on or off. That's really the only choice that we've got. In my opinion, if we choose the other choice, the development's gone and it's done. And so that's where we're at. I tried to bring additional options. I tried to look at, can we get something that would work, satisfy both parties? I think we got the answer to that from both sides. Neither one seemed to be all that interested in heading down that path. I guess at that point, you can make a decision on whether we side with the city or we side with the development. I'm giving us the option to side with the development, and we'll vote our conscience on that as we do on every issue that comes before us. But that's at least our starting point on the issue.
Any further comments? Rob?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. So as I was saying earlier, when I was saying it at the wrong time, I guess, but my concern and questions come from our commitment about economic development in our city. We've talked at length about property tax and sales tax and how we're short of revenue for some of the things we look and want to do. This is a $10 to $15 million project, maybe even more, that a major corporation wants to bring to Minot. And we're about to tell them no again because of a right-hand in turn lane, which a traffic study that came out shows actually improves the traffic flow on 13th. Now, the city has rebutted a number of times the Collier's traffic study, and every time the goalpost seems to change. Well, first it was we didn't like this, and then it was this, and then now it's a site picture that we've never heard anything of. Like, this facility will bring anywhere from $150,000 to $300,000 a year in property tax and $300,000 a year in sales tax to our community. That's money that the rest of us don't have to come up with then to take care of all the projects that we keep seeing come before us. I don't understand how we as a city can keep turning away big, major corporations that want to come to our city. And I'm going to throw, we had a thing with Gooseneck earlier. We had Walmart on North Hill. We're talking about having to fix that road up on North Hill now where the school is. And if we'd let Walmart come to town, that road would be fixed and everything would be fine up there. So here we are again, about to make a decision which will impact things and hurt our city if we don't allow it. So I'm with Alderman Blessam. I think we don't have a lot of great choices, but I think the best choice is to allow this development to go forward with the right in turn lane, so at least it brings something to the city rather than just watching another major corporation walk away from us.
Lisa?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think over the many years that I've sat up here, I probably said many, many times, I'm not an engineer, and I don't pretend to be one. So I rely on engineers' expertise. They're trained, they're experienced, and they give us what they believe is the right answer. But we have conflicting reports from engineers. And so without saying one is right and one is wrong, because I don't think that that's the case, we are just faced with a very difficult decision. And I pondered this one a lot, but I think that I am leaning towards allowing that entrance in, because I think that the true problem is our problem, and I think that's the 21st Avenue intersection. I think that's what we need to be dealing with. Not getting in the way of development, but looking at the issue that really does belong to us and trying to fix that.
Any further discussion? Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Here we have a Minot developer of almost 50 years. And we actually have an existing business of Circle K that is in Minot, looking to expand to an additional location. We talk about economic development all the time. Well, here it is. Circle K is looking at investing upwards of $13 million in Minot. Neither the developer or Circle K are looking for tax incentives, tax breaks, loan buydowns, no cash incentives, and no facade improvement program. What they are asking for is to support a plan that, in their words, as Mr. Coughlin said a little while ago, Circle K Holiday will always choose consumer-friendly access and the safety first and foremost. That's why I believe I will support the motion.
Any further comments? Anything? Okay, go ahead.
I'll throw them out there. Yeah, this has been one that's been on our plate we've been hearing about it for a couple of years. And the thing that keeps getting driven home is through some of the back and forth
and this is the safest and best. This is the safest and best. And I think when, and I wasn't around in the 80s, 90s, 70s when some of these other corridors were developed throughout Minot. I think probably, the amount of access points on Broadway at grade level, no median, you can't turn left out of Taco John's on South Broadway. I mean, that was the safest and best. We talk about frontage roads, how we try to get rid of them now. We have all these frontage roads throughout town that don't allow access to businesses, and we kind of scratch our head when we think about what our predecessors were thinking when they developed these corridors, right? But at the time, I do believe they were working under the guise and under the perception that this is the safest and best. And I trust the engineers that we have on staff that are looking at this and maybe to Alderman Blessum's comments earlier, you're for this development, but you're not for this portion of it. And I'm not trying to take anything other than at surface level, right? And they are for this development, but they want to do it with the future growth of Minot and the future expansion of Minot and the future improvement and the future improvements and safety of Minot into account. So I think that's why I'm going to support staff, and I'll actually vote against this motion because I'm not against this project either. I'd love for them to invest in this location, but I want them to do it with Minot in mind, not just this development, not just this plat in mind. I want them to take the perception of what our staff has done and saying, how does this affect Minot? How does this affect my kids that will drive this road in Minot? How will this affect my commute in Minot 10, 15, 30 years from now? So again, those are my comments. I'll leave it at that. But I think safest and best might be now, but I don't know if it's going to be the safest and best 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So I'm going to vote against this.
Any other comments? Any further discussion? I think for me, what it boils down to is safety. Yeah, the project's approved. We just are, it's a series of compromises, and we just want to compromise, and a compromise that falls on safety. And really, to me, what it comes down to is if the council approves this and we move forward with this, and God forbid there's an accident or somebody gets killed, it's not Mr. Coughlin's problem. He'll be in Florida counting his money. It's not big Circle K. They're going to keep continuing. The blood's going to be on our hands, and that concerns me. And 100% of the time, I will always side with public safety over the almighty dollar. So for those reasons, I just can't support this. Please record your vote.
The motion passed 4-3. Dissents from Janser, Pittner, and Ross.
Okay, moving on. Item 5.2 on the agenda is a public hearing Renaissance Zone case M-108, conditional approval for 304 East Central Avenue. Now is an opportunity for those who wish to speak in favor of or against the conditional approval. Second call for those who wish to speak in favor of or against the conditional approval. Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing and approve the item with recommendations from staff.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion passed 6-1 with a dissent from Alderman Samuelson.
Moving on to item 6 on the agenda is our consent. We have 21 items on our consent agenda. We've been asked to pull item 6.10. Are there any others that need to be pulled? Any others that need to be pulled? Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council?
Move approval on the remaining items.
We have a motion by Paul. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Rob.
Yep.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Moving on to the item that was pulled, 6.10. What are the wishes of the council?
Move approval with staff recommendations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Lisa, you asked to have this pulled.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If, I think it's maybe Melody, I'm not sure if someone would come up, if you could just kind of discuss the process that this item went through.
Mayor Ross, Alderwoman Olson. We actually had two different interviews that we did. We had 7 banks that had applied, and we interviewed initially 4 of them. And the Bremer that we went with, they were actually the top in that. I don't know if you want me to list like the rest of the places of what they were, or
Were there specific items or benefits, or how did Bremer kind of rise to the top? What was it that was most appealing to the city? What will be most beneficial to the city?
their technology that they had, and they're going to help us like implement the technology, work with us in reaching out to our vendors so we can move forward like with efficiency, with electronic payables, more electronic deposits, things like that, so it's less hands-on work for everybody. We'll streamline the process.
And the bank that we are moving our accounts from, did they submit an RFP, and were they part of that interview process?
Yes, they were.
Okay, thank you.
Harold.
If I can just add, thank you, Mel. I appreciate that. That was a great response. In addition, one of the big differences was the interest rate that they were willing to pay while our money was with their bank. And if I remember from our finance director, it was a difference of probably about $500,000 in interest revenues over that period of time. So in addition to the technology issues, there was also financial reasonings of a better financial package for the city on the investment and interest on those funds while they were in the bank.
Thank you.
Rob.
I just wanted to tell Mel and Dave, I sat on the committee which helped go through all this stuff, but you guys did a fantastic job, and you really did your due diligence. So I just wanted to tell you guys thank you on the city's behalf.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Mel. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion passed unanimously.
Moving on to action items 7.1, addition of restricted covenants for property acquisitions. What are the wishes of the council?
Move approval.
We have a motion by Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mark. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion passed unanimously.
Moving on to item 7.2 on the agenda, City of Minot Animal Pound Services request for proposals. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move the recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion by Mark, second by Paul. Any discussion? Mike?
Okay, so I guess I have a few questions. I don't know where they'll be addressed, to be honest. Is there someone that led this, Harold?
Captain Plessis is here. The police department is responsible for this contract, so they've been working on the RFP and the responses in the memo.
So I just want to start. So number one, just to be clear, we got one response. Correct. One of the things that in the memo, it refers, we have $47,500 budgeted for next year. I think in the memo it says we expect it to be higher. As I just did some back of the envelope, I think we're talking probably a minimum of 3 times higher. Is that kind of your thought process? Because if I've got it right, we're gonna be locking down 5 cats and 5 dog cages essentially every day all year, whether we're using them or we're not.
At a minimum, that's
That's
correct.
Right, and so it could be even more than that if there's more cats or dogs at any one time. And so, and with that, I'm trying to remember all the numbers. It's $35 a day unless they're over 50 pounds. So again, we're talking somewhere in the range of $150,000 before we even get off the ground, and it could be higher if the numbers are higher, which means we're at least 3 times what we thought.
That's
Is that
correct.
correct?
So Captain Sunheim ran estimates, and we believe it'll be around 189,000 per year, so substantially higher.
I don't know what else to say, I guess.
Mr. Mayor.
Lisa?
So Captain Plessis, I think in the memo from Souris Valley, they had recommended that we reduce our number of requested spots or cages or kennels. Has that been considered, and has that been taken into consideration in the figuring the numbers?
I guess I'm not sure what you're,
What number of spots are you asking to reserve in this?
so the minimum that they're okay with is 5 cats and 5 dogs.
Okay.
Reserved. Now, if we go over that, it would go up from $35 to $45. We have members of Souris Valley Animal Shelter here to answer questions in terms of the proposal. I will also say we ran numbers, and we didn't come to this recommendation lightly. I mean, we're part of the concern is obviously we're about 2 months away from the end of our contract, so obviously that plays a part. We have options in terms of if the city had an appetite for creating a pound of their own. However, 2 months does not give us a whole lot of time to actually make that happen. So the proposal is to negotiate or use the framework to negotiate a year. I mean, really what it comes down to is whether this is really financially viable for us in the future, or would there another option be the way to go. I can say that we've looked around to other area for guidance. Grand Forks just signed a contract for $198,000 for their pound services. I can say Bismarck owns their pound. They budget about $278,000 per year. So it's not cheap business no matter what we do. I can also say that Minot Vet Clinic was giving us quite a deal. It was well under market value. So we've been getting by fairly cheap for many years, but they're adamant that they're out of the pound business. So that's really where we're at right now. If there are any other questions, I'd certainly, and if there's, I mean, in terms of what we're dealing with right now, we take in about 800 animals per year. So we're talking 400 cats, 400 dogs. That's quite a bit of service.
Right.
If you compare Grand Forks' pound or their shelter, it's 198,000, but they're not including vet services, which Souris Valley Animal Shelter will include. So that's not really apples for apples. It's certainly Grand Forks is a bigger city, but it's going to be more expensive for them as well.
Thank you.
Mike?
Were there any other, even inquiries, other discussions with other providers?
No. So Souris Valley is the only one that turned in a proposal. There was question as to whether Hairball Haven would submit a limited, maybe take care of just the cats. They did not, so that's where we stand.
If I can continue, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, continue.
One of the other things that, that they reference in their response is that the impound and license fees haven't changed in a long time. Is that also something that we need to take a look at? And could you explain real quick just how are those paid? I mean, if it's a feral cat, I assume there's really no fee to charge anybody, right? But if it's one that's actually owned by somebody and they come and pick it up, I would imagine we can collect something from them for the process.
Yeah, correct. So about half of the dogs that come in, well, a little over half of the dogs are claimed. Cats, out of that roughly 400, only 29 are claimed. So obviously feral cats are a problem. So there are things you can do to reduce your liability as far as feral cats, maybe programs that you can follow. I'm definitely not the expert on that. But there's also other options like requiring chipping for dogs. if dogs are chipped, we can increase that 200 animals that are claimed, hopefully substantially enough that more animals are claimed just prior to ever being impounded. The animal warden would be able to scan the dog and see where the owner is and bring the dog directly rather than bringing them to the pound. So that number would go down.
Harold?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, there's some bigger issues and concepts that are related to this that I would encourage the council to talk about at some point. Alderman Blessam, you bring up the point about, the cost of licenses. The ordinance is only as good as it's enforced, and to be honest with you, I don't know how many dogs and cats are getting licensed in the city of Minot. At the risk of public confession, we moved here, we bought a dog. I inquired, how do I license my dog? I was told to go, and when I go take it to the vet, it will get licensed there. My wife talked with the vet. They said they don't do that. And when I talked with our police chief, you don't come down to the police department to license your dog. The vets take care of that. So there's a breakdown in communication here where it's not happening. So that's an issue, in my opinion. Secondly, I think we probably need to look at our ordinances and update those. In accordance with our ordinance right now, we impound for 3 days, and if the dog isn't, or the animal isn't claimed, by ordinance, we're supposed to dispose of that animal, which is no longer typically socially or culturally acceptable. We've had a great partnership with the Minot Vet Clinic and those kinds of things, of working with rescues and not putting those animals down and moving them on so they can find new homes. And I want to distinguish here that there's a difference between the level of service of a pound versus an animal shelter. Unfortunately, I have some experience in dealing with these issues in previous communities and those kinds of things. But that'll be a challenge. So there's bigger issues here. But I think to Captain Plessis's recommendations in the memo, it's going to take us time to discuss through those and fix those. And while I agree with the concerns of Alderman Blessam with regards to 3 times the cost, I also agree with Captain Plessis that Minot Vet Clinic has done a great service to this community by ultimately providing those services to the community of Minot at 25% of the cost. We've benefited from that for a long time. And I've watched this happen in many communities. We had this happen in a previous community, and we had to change vets, and we had a huge increase in costs because those were caught back up to market rate. And so this is a challenge for us, both financially, culturally, and for the health and service of our animals. That's going to take some time to talk through that, which is why I'm supportive of the recommendation of staff to issue this contract. We'll have to accept the financial consequences that come with that. But we have some bigger picture conversations to have over the next 12 months on what services we're going to provide our community with regards to animals and how we're going to do that in a better, more efficient, effective way.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So just to follow up on a couple things, with the city manager, I agree, and I think, especially after hearing some of the numbers from around the state, I don't like the fact that it's $190,000, but it feels like bringing it in-house, trying to put together a facility, hire staff, do all the things are gonna add up to a heck of a lot more than that. So I think that we're likely on the right track with doing it this way. Just a procedural question, the motion that we have on the floor is to accept the staff recommendation. Do we have a term of an agreement in there, or do we need to specify that with an amendment?
I believe in the memo, staff's recommendation is for 1 year.
Okay.
It's a 1-year contract.
Rob?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just, Captain Plessis, and maybe you answered it and I just didn't hear it. Do we collect anything currently from citizens that come and collect their dog or their cat from the pound? Like if we gave them vet services or we stored them there and fed them, do we charge them anything currently?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
There is a fee for it. I'd have to ask Captain Sunheim. He did all the legwork on this, so he's the expert. I'm going to ask him what the cost is.
Alderman Full, Mayor Ross. So roughly about 20 to 25% of what we allocate out right now, we get back. And so they usually they will pay for the boarding fees, they'll pay for a pickup fee and things like that under ordinance. So we get about 25% back of what we expend.
Okay, so we're losing money then.
Yeah, I don't think we're in the process of making money on it.
Right,
Yeah,
well,
we do.
even breaking even at this point would be good, but, and then for either one of you, so I was looking through, South Valley Animal Shelter's response, and they had in there their 24 operating budget. Now, if I remember correctly, and if I'm incorrect, please say something, but last year, weren't they in the process of almost closing before they got a grant from somebody?
Yes, and that's why we asked them to be here to answer
Okay.
questions
So-
on that. I mean, that is obviously of a concern to us.
Right, so my question is, looking at that operating budget, and maybe the folks from Service Valley want to step up, those numbers you guys put in there, was that your estimated budget for the year, or is that your P and L that actually shows your income and your costs?
Hi there, I'm Zach Crookenberg, Vice President of the Board of Directors. That was our estimated budget for this year, but it actually matches quite
So your
closely.
P and L looks just like that for the year?
Income sources may be a little different, but as far as dollars, it does match up pretty well.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You bet.
Any further discussion? Steph?
I just have a question about the recommended action. So it, paragraph 2 says to direct city staff to negotiate operational and financial terms of a 1-year contract with Service Valley Animal Shelter. Does the council want staff to negotiate those terms and then bring the contract back to the council for approval, or can it move forward for the mayor's signature? Just something to consider if you want to see that again.
I'll go to the motion maker.
As far as I'm concerned, it can move forward.
Is the second okay with that? Paul? Okay. So,
Okay, no objection?
no objection, any objection from the council? Okay. Seeing none, is there any further discussion?
Mr.
Mark?
Mayor, I wanted to just pursue briefly the question that Alderman Fuller asked with regard to the stability of the organization. You know, there was some stuff on social media, it looks like August 21st, about SVAS could be closed momentarily. What is the situation today, or was that something that got resolved?
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm the executive director right now at the Service Valley Animal Shelter. We had a substantial gift given to us this year, upwards in the amount of $130,000 to get our clinic up and running. So with our new budget, that's what we're trying to move forward and be able to sustain ourselves through our opening our clinic, that services that we're going to be able to provide to the community, hopefully at the beginning of the year.
Carol, if I may follow up, you said that you have the financial solvency through the beginning of the year?
We're gonna, hopefully at the beginning of the year, we're working out everything to be able to open our community clinic to the community, so we can be able to get some money in. We've done our budget, so we're hoping that it'll help us just kind of make it through.
So what's the plan for revenue sources for 2025 through the life of this contract? January 1st to 2025 through December 31st of 2025. Does your financial contribution get you through that entire year? Does it just get you through the end of the year?
No, it'll help us get going, so we are able to generate the income that we need to be able to sustain through the whole year.
Rob?
Thank you. Just real quick, you said hopefully by the beginning of the year, right? So help me understand that. You guys are planning to open a clinic by the beginning of the year, but you aren't sure if you're going to be able to?
Well, no, we've hired a full-time vet.
Okay.
So we're just trying to get everything, our clinic is ready to go. We're just restocking and trying to get the new software in place, and giving her some time to transition out from her current role. So our plan is to open at the beginning of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Scott?
So for the ballot, or for this contract, then you will have a vet on site?
We will.
Okay, because that is part of the RFP, correct? The other question I have for you is, from my understanding, at our pound right now, most of the animals are not euthanized, and they are taken to other places, so they're not put down. Is that still an option under this particular contract, that other entities can come in and get those dogs, and we're not paying the $85 for you guys to?
Yep. We have had some communication, some meetings with some other organizations, so we can continue to partner and move those animals out. If they're not picked up in the 3 days, they'll either be adopted out through our rescue or transferred to another partner rescue to help find them homes.
Okay, but my question is for you guys to do that in order to take those after the 3 days, when the 3 days is up, we pay $85 per animal for you guys to basically take them and then find them homes. If there's another rescue that comes in within those 3 days that wants that, or after that 3 days that wants that dog, is that possible?
Yeah.
So would we still be paying the $85 then?
That's something. So, yes, because we'll be providing all the medical for it, so.
Mike?
So just to clarify on what this will mean going forward, we're talking about 800 animals next year likely, almost 3 a day. Is that on track with these other organizations to take those on at that kind of rate? Because that seems like a lot.
Yeah, we actually have a lot of movement through our organization as well. So we do think it's feasible to be able to stay on track with that.
Lisa?
Thank you. So I think something that has maybe impacted your current budget was the practice of bringing in animals from out of state. And has that practice ended?
Yes, we have not taken an out-of-state animal since March of, what was it, 2023?
Okay.
That was our last time.
Thank you.
Harold?
This may not be a question for you. This might go back to Captain Sunheim or Captain Plessis. So we've been talking about dogs and cats, which is obviously a major volume of what we're dealing with, but our officers also deal with a lot more animals than just dogs and cats. And my understanding is SVAS doesn't have the capacity for cattle, goats, pigs, snakes, etc. So what's the plan for those animals? Because this contract's all inclusive.
Yep, we already had conversations with the Minot Vet Clinic, who are still willing to work with us in regards to livestock. So that's already been kind of put in place. We've talked to them and discussed what that looks like. So we do plan on working with the Minot Vet Clinic as far as livestock goes.
Any further discussion? Thank you. Thank you. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second on the floor. Seeing no further discussion, please record your vote.
Motion passed 6-1 with a dissent from Alderman Samuelson.
At this time, before we move on to the next item on the action section of the agenda, we'll take a 10-minute break, 10-minute recess. We will reconvene at 7:52. All right, it is 7:52 and we are back in session. Moving on in the agenda, we are on to item 7.3, contract amendment facade improvement, case FI-1123, Second Avenue Southeast. What are the wishes of the council?
Move approval.
I have a motion by Paul. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lisa. Discussion. Any discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion passed 6-1 with a dissent from Alderman Samuelson.
Moving on to 7.4, Lagoon Area Land Lease, request for quotes. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mike.
I'm going to actually move the alternative. There was some discussion that we didn't hear last time, so I'm going to move that we move away from the quotes and continue negotiations with Mr. Mickelson.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Did you catch that? Kayla?
I think so.
It's essentially the staff alternative.
Discussion. Rob?
Thank you. So Mr. Mickelson, after we had, a couple sessions ago, when we went ahead and we pulled the contract and we put it out for bid, Mr. Mickelson called me and asked me, hey, how come nobody contacted me about this before you guys made a decision? And I said, well, I don't know. And he said, well, I'd like somebody to come out here and look at this. So I went out to the city quarter and spent about an hour and a half of time out there with him. The public information officer, Jennifer, there we go. She put up a picture that I brought in. So if you guys take a look at this, you can see the lagoons run across the north of the picture, and this is off the Ward County GIS map. Got a fancy little pointer here. I don't know if it'll show up on the TV, it won't. So, and then down in the bottom, you'll see where the finished lagoons are with the reeds and the cattails and everything else. Now, I highlighted in red, or not highlighted, but I wrote in red Mr. Mickelson's 2 quarters on the south of the lagoons and Mr. Mickelson's 2 quarters on the east side of the lagoons. And then the city's quarter is on the north side up there, as you can see marked. The city's quarter is a 160-acre quarter, obviously, but it's only 115 tillable acres. And you can see how it breaks up with the low-lying areas in the orange that I've outlined there. So what I wanted to point out in those orange areas, and if you look further to the east at some of the other low-lying areas, you'll see that all those quarters have low-lying areas, but on the quarter, the city's quarter and Mr. Mickelson's quarters that directly surround the finished lagoon right there, all of those low-lying areas have a bright white substance, which is salt. It's alkaline material, and salinity is nothing uncommon in North Dakota. But if you take a look around, you'll see that none of the other low-lying areas have that. It's just the stuff that's directly located next to, whether it be the finished lagoon or one of the northern other lagoons. And if I didn't take it, but if you look at the north side of those lagoons, you'll see some salinity up there too. So anyway, we drove around and we looked at this, and if you look at Mr. Mickelson's quarters directly to the east of our quarter and directly to the east of the finished lagoon, you'll see that that salinity lines all along the edge. And they plant it every year and nothing grows. That isn't just a low-lying area, that's something completely different. And then there's a little bit of it on the south side of the finished lagoon there in that last little bit of orange. Now, the thing that changed out here, and this was back in the 80s, so the natural drainage for this whole area was to the northeast, and you can see that through the low-lying areas. They changed the surface drainage on this in the 80s, so all of the surface drainage now goes through the ditches on the south side of the lagoons, and it moves to the west instead of to the northeast. So this isn't above water, or above ground water that's flowing. This is below ground water, some sort of natural drainage or leakage, without accepting any responsibility from some of the water areas. So I spent that time out there with him. We looked around. I saw what he had to say. I looked at the areas. I mean, I got out and walked them. And there's an issue out there. And I think, to Jason's credit, when we talked about this last, and Harold's, we were all trying They were trying to let us know that there's something going on out there that we don't really want to find out about unless we want to accept responsibility. Now, having said that, I'll go back here for a second. So I talked to a number of ag bankers that I know through the industry, and I asked them, I said, on our quarter right here, it's 115 tillable acres. How much land or how much rent could we get? And they looked at it, and most of them agreed that if we could get $50 an acre, we would be doing well. Now, cash rent in North Dakota is anywhere from $45 an acre to $75 an acre roughly. So we'd be on the low end of that. And they said that would be based off of just the way the quarter breaks up and all the low-lying areas that can't be planted or grown. So if you take that 115 acres times $50 a square foot, it gives us about $5,750 a year in income for the city. That's what we would get if we got $50 an acre. Now, if we were to get really lucky and get $75 an acre, it would up that about $3,000. So we're talking about the difference between $8,700 and $5,700, which is what we would collect if we cash rented that to somebody else. Now, if you look at the low-lying areas around there in Mr. Mickelson's land, I just assumed that was roughly 50 acres. It's quite a bit of land. It could be less, but I think it's actually more in the areas that he can't plant because of that soil salinity. And again, speaking to the bankers that I know and a couple of other farmers, the average production on a quarter of land is about $325 an acre. So if you take 50 acres times $325, and we're going to pay Mr. Mickelson damages, we'd owe him $16,000 and some change every year in damages towards that area. That's just the minimum right there. The big problem is part of the contract that we currently have with Mr. Mickelson says he will not sue us for any damages associated with this. I think that's probably a good thing because when I got back after spending some time with Mr. Mickelson, I got online, I did some research. I verified with Jason or I think it was actually the city manager, Harold, had told me they had just done another hydrological study. A hydrological study will cost us anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000 based off of the size of this area. So let's say that hydrological study comes back and it says, yep, your lagoons are leaking. Before the EPA even gets in, we're going to get sued by Mr. Mickelson. And he's already stated that. I'm just warning everybody right now. And he won't want us to just take and reimburse for the land that is bad. He's going to make us buy every quarter in damages. He doesn't want, nobody's going to break up a quarter and take 50 acres off it and leave it as a regular quarter. So he would want us to buy every quarter. And I think right now you're looking at between $400,000 and $500,000 for a quarter of land. And let's say that the EPA says, okay, you can repair your lagoons. Jason, could you come up here for 1 second, please? In just the little bit of conversation you and I had, if we had to repair any or all of the lagoons from leaking, what do you estimate that would cost us?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Fuller, so basically we just built a landfill cell, which is very similar. Compacted clay liner with a geomembrane. That was about $2.2 million.
Okay.
So in this case, these are clay lined cells. You would have to evacuate all the water. There's going to be a ton of muck excavation to get down to good solid ground. So I would imagine that you would eclipse that $2 million number.
Okay. All right. And so then that's the best case scenario, right? I mean, one lagoon, $2 million, we've got to buy 4 quarters of land because we can't fix them. So that would cost us another 1.6 to 2 million. Now, what happens if the EPA gets a hold of this after we have the hydrological study done and they say, hey, your lagoons are leaking? And as the city manager has pointed out before, we're kind of on borrowed time with our lagoons. They say, oh, you're done with the lagoons. If they're leaking, shut them down. Then what's our next option?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Fuller, so next option would be mechanical. We would just abandon the lagoons. In the CIP, we have a placeholder for a mechanical wastewater treatment plant. It's about $90 million.
Okay, so $90 million.
And that number is from a few years ago. And, at recent meetings, we've discussed inflation and these things. So I don't have an accurate current number, but it's big.
Okay. So I guess in just asking those questions, thank you, Jason. In asking those questions, what I wanted to get to for the council is we're talking about gaining maybe $3,000 a year in income for the city versus costing us a few $100,000 to a few $1 million or $90 million to rectify the situation if this goes the wrong way. So I think Alderman Blessam is right. I think we need to look at continuing talking with Mr. Mickelson until such a time that either he doesn't want to farm it or the city needs it for our wastewater treatment facility and just go from there. Thanks.
Any further to Mike?
So I'm not, from the beginning, I wasn't a fan of the contract that was in place. And so a question, Steph, I'd really like to see that staff be given direction to at least put the 1 year opt-out clause in at any time. Are we okay in terms of bringing a motion back if we only add that stipulation on this motion?
So I think the motion on the floor is to re-engage negotiations with Mickelson, and so the council's willing to, you can place any conditions on that as you want. I mean, we would just revisit it using our prior lease. If you want it for a 1 year, we can include that term, and we can include any other terms in that negotiation too.
So to be clear about what I'm asking though, we've already decided this. So I want to be careful that we're not just revisiting things that this council has completed. Okay, so I was on the prevailing side, but our rules say that should have come in the next meeting, and that didn't occur. And so I guess what I'm trying to do is be mindful of that. So what I would like to do, and I guess I'll bring the amendment and we can see if there's any objection. What I would like is, I'm not worried about lease term. And in fact, even right now, the automatic 5-year, I'm not all that worried about, as long as both parties have a 1 year notice to exit the contract. That's what I'm looking for in terms of an amendment.
Is that your
That is
stated
my
amendment?
Yes.
So we have an amendment. Is there a second?
Well,
It'd be, well, if I made the original motion, so if the second is okay.
Okay.
And I'm fine with it, but let me say on top of that, I spoke to Mr. Mickelson while we were out there that day about the automatic renewal and about the 1 year opt-out for both sides, and he was absolutely completely fine with removing the automatic renewal from the lease and adding the 1 year opt-out for both sides. So yes, I'm fine with that.
Okay, any objection from the dais?
Well, I'm glad Rob's okay with it, but I'm the second, so.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
oh, I'm sorry. I thought, well, Mike was pointing at me.
I
I'm
had
sorry.
that
I thought
down
Mike
here.
was pointing
I
at me.
had that- Are you okay with it, Paul?
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Sorry,
Any
Paul.
objection?
Are we
Kayla,
doing
you
this
wanna-
as are we doing this as an amendment, or are you friendly amending the original?
It's my own motion, so as long as the second's okay, and then there's no
Okay, so
objection,
it's gonna
right?
be friendly.
Yep, yep.
Okay. So just to continue quickly, again, I'm at the same spot with this really. This still doesn't feel great to me. But again, given what Alderman Fuller has put out there and some of the discussions that, I know I had with Harold about this a little bit, this is probably our best bet. The alternatives are not great, and long-term are not great out there at all. And so where we're sitting today, this is probably the best alternative.
Steph?
And as far as this negotiation goes, if we reach an amicable lease agreement with Mr. Mickelson, I assume the council's gonna wanna see that lease agreement and approve it, correct? Okay.
Any, Paul?
I guess a question, my understanding, just to dumb this down, we're gonna negotiate exclusively with Mickelson so that we have protection, so we don't get sued. Is that only during the life of that contract that's in place, or is that a waiver of, I mean, what's stopping us from saying, hey, we're gonna opt out, or this contract expires, and then we get sued as soon as this? I mean, there's no future protection in place for the city. I mean, if this is only one, I mean, it's just we're kicking the can down the road, I guess, from getting sued later. So I guess we could have, I don't know if there's any protection that can be given to the city or negotiated within the lease for future protections. I would like to maybe make that a part of it if possible.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I think that was the intent of why you had the multi-year renewals. was to put that protection in place for longer periods of time. The contract is only binding during the term of the contract. So if we're entering into 1-year leases, that clause is only effective for the year that that lease is in place.
Mr. Mayor, to be clear though,
Yep.
we're not talking about a 1-year lease, right? That's just, that's the 5-year lease, the 5-year renewals, I'm not affecting those. All that I'm giving us is a 1-year opt-out at any time.
That would be correct. So it'd be, that guarantee would be in place for the 5 years of the contract. Unless either part, but in that case, you're providing Mr. Mickelson the 1-year opt-out as well. So he can give you 1-year opt-out, and as soon as that year is done, contract is dead, and he can sue the city.
Any further questions or discussion? Rob?
I guess I just asked Steph, is there any way to protect us into the future, Steph?
I mean, this is essentially a settlement agreement is what's being negotiated. So it's a settlement agreement that's amicable to the parties to try to avoid this dilemma of what are the damages. So in the event that we can't enter and negotiate an amicable agreement between the city and Mr. Mickelson, I would recommend that the city require sufficient proof of damages before agreeing to any further negotiations with Mr. Mickelson. This is something that we're going to enter into in anticipation that we're not going to have to approach this annually. Does that make sense? So, I mean, this is avoiding the time and the energy to determine what damages are. And so this is kind of a shortcut to that at this point.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second on the floor. Seeing no further discussion, please record your vote.
Motion passed unanimously.
Moving on the agenda, we move on to action or item number 8 on the agenda. That's personal appearances. Now is an opportunity for those who wish to step and address the council. Now is your opportunity to step forward. I do request that you keep your comments, discussion to 5 minutes out of respect for others who wish to speak to the council. Second call. Seeing none, we will move on to item number 9 on the agenda. That's miscellaneous and discussion items. Item 9.1, snow and ice control plan presentation. Mr. Banfield, the floor is yours.
I know not many people want to hear about this right now, so we'll make this one pretty quick. Good evening, Mayor Ross, City Council. I'm going to go ahead and run through a few slides with you relatively quickly, just to go ahead and give a quick overview of what to expect this coming snow and ice control season, okay? So with that, the team did conduct an after-action review, which is where the AAR comes from, as well as developed an implementation plan, which you will see here within the first few slides. I will jump through the operations processes themselves, just to give everybody an understanding of what to expect for this coming snow season. From there, I'd like to go ahead and cover some of the maps and prioritizations the team has put together. Now, this is in an effort to go ahead and set up Fleet Pass, which is a new software we're bringing on board, which was budgeted this year. Finally, I'd wrap up today with covering the third-party snow removal decision processes we go through. What are the deciding factors behind going with third-party snow removal service, and then some of the associated costs associated with that. And then lastly, I'll just touch base on a few ordinances just to make sure everybody's aware of them as we enter this season. So as I mentioned before, we did conduct an after-action review and then developed an implementation plan associated with the root cause analysis that was conducted. From there, we went ahead and developed an improvement plan based on these root causes to hopefully help not only the city staff get after the snow removal a little bit quicker, but also help the community as well from a safety standpoint. So some of the improvement areas we focused in on, we went ahead and bucketed these just because there were so many root causes associated with multiple different areas of problems we had noticed within our current plan. We developed some interdepartmental agreements. One to go ahead and stage some equipment up at the airport to go ahead and give us an opportunity to repair our snow removal equipment while it's on the north side of town rather than them traveling down to the Public Works building to go ahead and make those corrections. We went ahead and asked for increased rental budget in the 2025 season to include rentals for additional wings for a couple pieces of equipment, mainly the graders themselves, to go ahead and help the team move snow a little faster. We went ahead and developed a new prioritization strategy, which again you'll see in the maps coming up in the next few slides. And then finally, we wanted to highlight this one is for the snow emergency declaration strategy itself. We are going to be declaring a snow emergency for the removal itself a little bit sooner. And there are some steps that we'll highlight on the operation side of it. On the training, again, just like you would expect, we went ahead and coordinated some additional training events for our team. We developed new training maps outlining cul-de-sacs, hills, school areas, and various city locations to include emergency services as well. From an information standpoint, we're going to be releasing some PIO clips regarding the ordinances, just to make sure the city is aware of what's out there, what the ordinance says, how the city is interpreting that ordinance, and how we're going to go ahead and correct that ordinance if an infraction is found. From a policy standpoint, we went ahead and updated the snow removal plan itself. Most of those covered the objectives themselves, limitations, communications, processes, and how we communicate interdepartmentally as well as with the community as well. And then last, we kind of wrapped up with some CPI requirements. Really, from a continuous process improvement standpoint, we want to make sure we're getting after any issues we might encounter throughout the year. Lastly, and I won't cover it too much here, is signage. We are looking at a few different ways to get around this. Some of the workarounds we currently have right now are temporary signs, earlier snow removal declaration, and then various towing options for PD, which is again the last resort. For the operations processes, like I said, this is where we had the biggest change. We just wanted to outline what the team was thinking, how they approached the snow season. So from a pre-winter standpoint, really it's just getting after preparation. The team's going to go through and inspect the equipment, make sure everything's winterized appropriately. We're going to review our procurement policy itself, making sure everything's ready to go. From the contractor standpoint, we're going to do a third-party snow removal review, make sure that we have the contractors at the ready, or there are viable sources within the city to go ahead and utilize. From software, I did mention that we're going to be using Fleet Pass, which I'll show here in a second. And then, again, utilizing our PIO to their fullest extent to make sure that we disseminate all the information as we move along. For our pre-snow event, we're going to continue to monitor the National Weather Service website itself, just to ensure that if any snowstorm is predicted, we're going to get in front of it. From a declaration standpoint, again, I've outlined the steps that we need to do, but the biggest takeaway here is from a Public Works Director standpoint, whether it's myself, Jason, City Manager, or Assistant City Manager stepping in to make that declaration, what we'll end up doing is we'll need to put out information as far as what areas are going to be closed throughout the city, as well as how long they will be closed. And at any point, if let's say the snow removal or the snow emergency is no longer an issue, we can go ahead and call it off at that point. From a schedule standpoint, really it's nothing different than what we've done in previous years. The team will run 24-hour operations. They'll be put on 2 12-hour shifts. We'll have a personnel sitting in alert status to go ahead and rotate the schedules as needed. From an equipment standpoint, again, really the team has this ready to go during the pre-winter season, but we'll continue to go ahead and make sure that all of our equipment is ready for snow removal, whether it's the salt and sand mix, or it's the brine mixture, or it's actually just having our equipment ready to go with gates operational for all of our motor graders, and as well all of our attachments for our front end loaders as well ready to go. For the snow event itself, we're just going to want to make sure that rather than wait to the 4 inches of snowfall accumulation, like as with what has been done in previous years. We're gonna dispatch early, meaning we're gonna get the salt and sand trucks out there to go ahead and make sure that the roadways are clear. Once that's complete, we'll go ahead and put out the rest of our bigger equipment to ensure that the snow is removed quickly. I did highlight the prioritized routes. Well, we'll talk about that here in a little bit. And lastly, on the residential side, again, we're going to be looking at implementing third-party snow removal services when the cost benefit is in our favor. In other words, if we're going to take just as many manpower hours to go out there and move it as a city, from city worker standpoint, then we're going to start looking at utilizing third-party snow removal services to give us a leg up on the snowstorm itself. And lastly, we have the post-event itself. So for repairs, anything that comes back damaged, obviously we would go ahead and make the repairs to the vehicles, as well as conduct a final review of not only the event itself, but the snow season once it's complete. So from a map standpoint, I do want to highlight what has been uploaded, will be uploaded. So again, we broke it out into 5 separate priorities. Now, this is not any different than what has been done in the past. This is really just your snow emergency routes. We just broke it out even further to go ahead and help us with tracking and data analysis when it comes to our Fleet Pass software. So this right here, what you're seeing is the priority 1 areas. It gets after the main roadways throughout the city, as well as some of the connection points as well, to ensure that the emergency vehicles are able to navigate their way throughout the city if the emergency arises. Priority 2 side of it gets after some of the connection pieces, again, closest to the emergency areas, school routes, stuff like that. The third priority gets after the hills throughout the city. So again, we can go ahead and focus our entire team's effort in those areas, and we can track completion time as well, again, giving us valuable data on setting those priorities for future years. Finally, we combined priorities 4 and 5 just because there's so few roadways, as you can see here. Each of those roadways, again, are really connections around the schools. We wanted to help Minot Public Schools as well to help ensure that they're able to get the students in and out safely. We've also looked at our new transit routes. Again, we found there's a few routes that we didn't have turnaround spots in, previously identified in emergency snow routes. So we wanted to cover those areas here. So again, as I mentioned, what does this mean? Well, this really helps us get after what we need to get after from a data gathering standpoint. So utilizing the Fleet Pass software, which is highlighted here, this gives us the opportunity to not only outline each of these priorities throughout the city, but it also gives us the chance to go ahead and track each priority throughout the emergency snow route by the individual priority themselves, and gives us a completion percentage as well as a percent remaining. Now, this is going to help out the public because we're going to go ahead and share this on the public-facing portal side. It'll give them the opportunity to see where the city is at when it comes to snow removal. It'll also give them additional information when it comes to where the city is going to be when it comes to residential areas as well. And it'll kind of help them predict how quickly they're going to be able to get out of their house. So from a third-party snow removal standpoint, so some big decision considerations here I want to highlight. Really what it's going to come down to is excessive snowfall at any one given time. The emergency responders requirements, again, if we need to help give them a route to get to an emergency, we want to make sure that we're providing that capability as well. And then lastly, again, tying to the emergency responders capabilities, we want to get after the safety for the community itself. So just to give everybody an idea of what this cost entails, I wanted to highlight this. Again, this is just standard rates that we have seen. Tying it back to the 2022 sow season during the April timeframe when everybody had 3 feet plus of snow coming down in a 5-day span. It cost the city about $180,000. We had 7 contractors out there, 20 pieces of equipment. So I wanted to highlight this just to put it into perspective, okay? We are limited with what we have. There are a considerable amount of land miles throughout the city. So again, it's gonna take time for our folks to get out there. Just please be patient with us. Give us an opportunity to clear this appropriately to make sure that we maintain safety for all. The last couple of slides here, really just wanted to touch base on the ordinances. Please be on the lookout in the next few weeks, similar to what the recycling department has done for the city. We're going to be pushing out videos highlighting as many ordinances as we can that they pertain to snow removal. Just to one, help everybody understand what it is, what it means, what it looks like. And then finally get after what each infraction would entail and how that would be answered from a code enforcement standpoint. So here we see traffic control actions, central business district, again specific to them and the hours associated with them. We have the emergency routes itself, again tying back to the snow removal emergency declaration. We have impoundment procedures as well. So just please keep that in mind. Take a look at the ordinances if you get a chance. And then make sure that you are clearing your sidewalks relatively quickly after a snowstorm ends. And please try to prevent or try not to pile snow around hydrants and traffic signals. Again, it becomes a big hazard for our team. With that, I'll open up to any questions.
Any questions? Mike?
That's right. Thanks, Brian. Just a couple things for you. Number one, you mentioned road miles, sidewalks, things like that. How many alleyways are we clearing as a city? If I missed it, I apologize, but.
It is not in the slides, sir. Alderman Blessing, we do have that information though.
And maybe as a follow-up, is that mainly tied to sanitation, or do we just clear most of them?
So historically in the past, the street department hasn't removed snow from the alleyways. We've actually received assistance from sanitation. Jason, if you want to go ahead and elaborate on that.
Mayor Russ, Alderman Blessing, yeah, that's pretty much what Brian said. The alleys are a lower priority street. They're really tight. We have big equipment. They're very difficult. So once they kind of get a little more difficult for our sanitation trucks to get up and down, then we'll go with the loader and try to break a trail for them.
And is that typically just where we're doing sanitation?
That's correct.
Because and I guess what percentage do you just have that offhand? Is there a lot of trash in alleyways that you got to pick up?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Blessum, in terms of road miles, I'd have to do a little calculating. Talking in sanitation customers, we have about 13,000 total customers. We have about 3,000 alley collections.
Okay.
So it's a fairly significant amount.
And then if I can continue. So Harold, did you have something to add there?
I was just gonna say the one exception to that would be downtown, where we do clear alleys downtown, but it's usually lower priority once we've cleared all the streets downtown and we've caught up sufficiently on other routes that we can allocate the resources. But that is one that we would typically circle back to and clear out alleyways, would be in the downtown district.
Great. And if I can continue, Brian. So the next question then, so I know in some of the discussions that we had when we were talking through a little bit of snow back this spring and into the early part of summer, the enforcement side of the ordinances in terms of street parking and things like that, to me, it felt like a place where we had some, maybe opportunity is the wrong word, but a place where if we step that up, we may make the job easier. Now, the enforcement side isn't necessarily easier. And so do you laid some of that out, but do you expect to be a little more aggressive this season with that and hope to see some sort of reward from that?
Ross, Alderman Blessum. To some degree, yes, we are going to be a little more aggressive, but aggressive in the way of informative. There's still some things that we need to do as a city to go ahead and tighten up our side of things as well. Signage for one. Okay, we need to make sure that we have signage appropriately placed throughout the city to be able to properly enforce certain codes. We want to make sure that the community understands their role in snow removal as well, because we can't remove the snow without their assistance. If you go in there and you take a look at the snow removal plan, the one that's for this year, it gets after there's a limitation factor. We need help. Okay, so my goal this year is to start looking at informing the community first by getting those videos out there, getting that information out there to help answer some of the lingering questions or maybe some of the confusion factors regarding right-of-way, regarding depositing of snow in the business district areas, regarding where I can park and when I can't park. What are those timeframes? So we want to make sure that information gets out there. We are working with PD, and we've had numerous conversations with them to ensure that we outline a process that's appropriate for the city as we start to inform everybody.
Harold.
Back to the enforcement question and Alderman Blessum's, I think the key piece here is the trigger point is declaring a snow emergency, which as far as I know, I don't know when the last time a snow emergency was declared. We've issued travel warnings, but I don't think we've ever issued even with the blizzard in April, was that 23, 22? 22, the Easter holiday that we got all that snow. I don't think we even declared a snow emergency then. So I think the key piece is that, and then as Mr. Banfield states, partnering with our police department, at least for the first couple of snowstorms of a season, that these are the expectations. Snow emergency has been declared. Your vehicle needs to be off because you live on a snow route and those kinds of things. So we're not going to be going out and ticketing and towing immediately, but we will be working towards that in the future because if those vehicles are out there, it slows down our ability to clear snow quickly. And our goal is to do it as quickly as possible. We'll get to the residential units as quickly as possible. That's some of the feedback we had through our community survey. And Alderman Blessum, I think you hit the nail on the head. It comes down to enforcement. And we have to up the ante on that, so to speak. But I also agree with staff's approach that we're not just going to flip that light on and blind everybody all at once. We're going to gradually ease into that and give plenty of opportunity for education. But there will come a time that there will be accountability for that, and staff will be directed to enforce the ordinances as drafted and appropriate. I would recommend, and I think Mr. Banfield was going to touch on it briefly, there may be some potential changes to ordinance. I would like to see a tier system of snow emergency and what level of snow routes need to be cleared out at which tiers and those kinds of things. And I would like to see the authority to declare a snow emergency directed to the city manager's office in consultation with the public works director and the police chief going forward, because I think that's been some of the hang up in the past is no one wants the political fire of declaring a snow emergency and inconveniencing people's lives. And ultimately, I think that's why the city manager gets paid the big bucks. So,
Lisa?
Yeah, thank you. So I really do like the plan. I appreciate it, and I think that once it starts working, I think the citizens will appreciate it too. One concern that I've been involved in the past is the snow removal downtown. So where does that, is it still the same plan, or has that had any changes to it?
Mayor Ross, Alderwoman Olson, really there's not been a great deal of change when it comes to downtown. We're really trying to focus in on those ordinances, trying to get, obviously the vehicles off the roadways, to allow our teams to get in and out of the downtown areas quickly to remove the snow. We're also looking at where we can do dump sites for the snow that we do end up removing from the downtown area. We are looking at and talking with third-party snow removal contractors to go ahead and assist us with this. Again, it really all depends on what type of snow we get, how quickly it piles up, and how quickly the community rallies and helps us out and get the area cleared out so we can do what we need to do.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, in response, add to that a little bit. So a little over a year ago, I had a meeting with a lot of the downtown business owners with regards to these issues. We discussed some potential changes internally, which have not changed since that. We just didn't get a chance to use it last year because we had a pretty mild winter, didn't have a lot of snowstorms. So the plan was that we as staff would communicate more quickly with the Downtown Business Association. They were supposed to develop basically a communication matrix that we would contact the DBPA or whoever, and then that communication would disperse through the downtown. That we would communicate more quickly how soon, when we would come downtown to clear those out. And then their goal was to have all the snow off of their sidewalks and stuff off the curb. And then we would clear out any snow in the city's right of way beyond the curb at that point. But we would have to discuss where we're stockpiling that, where we're putting that, and those kinds of things. But that was the cooperation that we were looking for. And in addition, the downtown business owners asked for better enforcement of the ordinances downtown to keep those downtown business owners that weren't being responsible property owners, that we were holding them accountable to the ordinances as well. And that is something that city staff agreed to as well with regards to the downtown business owners. I mean, not everyone is represented by the DVPA, so it's important that we communicate with all downtown property owners. But that was the plan. I don't think we've deviated from that. We haven't had a chance to test that out yet because we haven't had a winter. I'm hoping we don't get to test it out again this year, but we'll see. But that was the conversation, and that's what we're preparing for.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 10. Before we get to that, I do want to remind everybody that one of our greatest responsibilities as citizens is to go out to vote. Tomorrow is election day, so please exercise your right, and I thank you for that. Moving on to item number 10, that's adjournment. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.